How have you been, mate?
Yeah, enjoying the sun.
Yeah,
It's been a nice week, hasn't it? So not too bad.
yeah,
Working on the tan.
yeah. Well, no, we can't moan, mate. Can we? We'll soon be crying when it's
No,
raining, or I will
exactly.
be.
Exactly.
So before we get stuck into your rugby story, mate, where was home for you as a kid, and who lived at home with you?
Home was Wakefield, Eastmoor. Uh, an old council, well, an old pit estate that was a council estate. Very similar to most other rugby league playing areas, Airedale and Redhill, Blackbrook and St Helens, wherever it is, just a dead working class place in Wakefield with mum, dad, and two sisters.
So where did that competitiveness come from? Do you think people are born with it, mate, or do you think it can be generated?
It's nature and nurture, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
there's space in for both. Um, I was my dad was an ex-pro, so I was around that sport. His career was cut short with a similar injury to what I ended up having, but in the '60s, that kind of really it saw you off. And he was at Wakefield, and back then Wakefield were a great team, so he was playing with Neil Fox and Harold Poynton
yeah,
and the likes of that. So I grew up going to watch him play cricket in the summer, playing rugby in the winter, because he obviously went back to playing amateur
yeah.
and then back to playing pro at Dewsbury. Um, and when I wasn't there, I was at. My mum was a nurse
Okay.
and she worked nights. Once she'd had us three kids, she had 4 or 5 years off. She went back to work part time, but their working week was she could do 3 days on, 4 days off. So she strung them together.
Right.
So she'd be on a shift of 6 nights and then
Yeah.
eight nights off. So we'd always go to my grandma's when we was a bit younger. So once a month we went to my mum's side in Castleford, and once a month we went to my dad's side in Huddersfield. When I were at my dad's side, he was the eldest of 10, and nine of them were boys. And
Bloody hell.
yeah, and the youngest three are triplets. That's where the girl
Yeah.
comes. Our Alison
Right.
came there. So the two boys in the triplets, they were only 5.5 years older than me. So I always
Right.
just wanted to join in, and I got picked on. Um, always had to do all the rubbish jobs and what have you, and always last into bat or always in goals or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. Um, Often it ended in tears and the picking on me. And I just got from my dad when he'd come and pick us up. If you don't want to play with the big boy, if you don't want to play with the big boys rules, don't play with the big boys.
Yeah.
And that
Fair
was,
enough.
you know,
Yeah.
that was. But I don't think that was much different to anybody else. Whether it was your
Yeah.
mates like say on the council estate, or you went home in tears, and he's like such and such hit me. Well, don't play with him then. It was,
Yeah. I'll
you
go
know,
out in it and back it, won it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and a bit of that survival of the fittest kind of thing. That was probably in most people in those areas, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it probably was maybe some natural competitiveness from my dad, who always liked his sports, but just I'm a big believer in you're a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And I was in a loving family, which is always a really good thing. And I don't buy into family as necessarily mum and dad, as long as whoever's there is loving.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't a soft love, so to speak. It was,
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got to look after yourself. So I, I was put in tough situations, but I was never scared. What the environments I was
Yeah.
in, it was, and you learn to sink or swim, and you get a little bit of both. You can't
Yeah.
get success in every single thing that you do. So.
Yeah. And obviously, we'll touch on what you went on to do after playing, which you probably had to input that ethos on. You had to have them tough conversations now and then with people.
Yeah, always.
Mm.
But I've always been quite strong-willed and
Yeah,
not single-minded in a hopefully daft way. But once I make my mind up, in for a penny, in for a pound. You make the decision, you live and die by those decisions, etc. There's no point complaining. Well, what if? You
yeah,
just gotta try and make the most of every situation that you've got, and that's not a sports thing. That for me, that's a life thing.
yeah.
It's you, you live and by your decisions. And again, you're never going to make all the right decisions, but maybe now I'm a bit of an old fart. That wisdom,
Hindsight.
that yeah, that
Yeah,
wisdom that comes with just being on the planet a little bit longer, is you know that you probably learn from the mistakes more than you do the successes, sort of, because
yeah,
you don't know why some of those successes are there um, all the time. Whereas when you get something wrong and you change it, there's more of a reason why
yeah.
something changes direction or is more successful for you. Um,
Probably accept it a bit more with it being your decision as well, isn't it? Or
yeah, well, yeah,
90% influenced by yourself.
yeah, without doubt, and it's it's probably it'll come up later about some of the decisions that I made and and why and the influences, but uh, I, I've never regretted it from a sporting perspective. I've never regretted any of the decisions that I made, and there's always been, or generally there's been other options. There's been options, or not other options. There's been options, but you've got to take into consideration what you know at the time and make what you think is the best decision. And then if you give it a good go, sliding doors. I'm a big believer in sliding doors as well. And every moment's a sliding door opportunity. Somebody comes and asks you a question, and it sets a train of thought off in a direction that it wasn't going in,
Yeah,
and so suddenly you do something that you weren't going to do. That's life. It's just living, those moments by moments. But those little decisions can lead you to something a little bit bigger and something bigger and so on and so forth. And it's about making the most of those moments, because they're everywhere.
yeah,
But there's also the big ones.
yeah,
There's also
yeah,
the do I or don't I get down on one knee? Do I or don't I sign for this club? Do I or don't I have kids?
yeah,
Those life decisions that people are making every day. Um, and then you got to live with them.
yeah. No, no, it's all perspective and fate and just trusting in yourself and your processes, I suppose, mate, without being too cliche and cringy in it. It's
Yeah. It's
yeah,
and being comfortable with living with them.
yeah,
That's another thing as well. But they're philosophical conversations that you could have around, you know,
yeah,
living life now, how we used to live life, and circumstances that take society in certain directions. And you
yeah,
know, it's it's for a good one that I can think of from a rugby perspective is at this moment in time, everybody's complaining about rugby leagues on its ass, so to speak.
yeah.
Sorry, language wise.
No, no, it's
And
right. That's what they're saying, mate, aren't they?
but it's always been there
Yeah,
in one way, shape, or form. That's what we are as rugby people.
yeah,
We're the poor relation of, and I'm not talking about just rugby union, the poor relation of other sports. We're not football, we're not cricket, we don't have billions. I mean, um, I love my cricket, and the IPL. They're making millionaires. 14-year-old
Yeah,
kids just scored a century. 14. I mean, it's phenomenal, the talent.
yeah.
But he's just got out for a second ball duck. That's the highs and lows of
That's
sport.
life, innit?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Hero to zero.
the ups and downs. But our sport's always been where it is. It was formed from workers being on the bones, so to speak, and not being able to afford to take time off work to play for nothing.
Yeah,
When other people that were maybe more well off then stayed where they were, and that was rugby union, and rugby league was born, so to speak. And they were the grafters, and they wanted a little bit of compensation, so to speak. It wasn't even necessarily a livable wage. That it wasn't full time professionalism back in 1895. Um, are we worse off now than we were 30 years ago when we went to Super League? But yeah, so be positive about the fact that, you know what? Well, different circumstances, we are where we are, but it's still a great sport. It's still, and they're the decisions that we could be just more positive about. Well, that's my outlook.
yeah.
I get what it's not everybody's.
No, and probably the game's missing it a bit, Alan, though, innit? Because people are focusing more on what's not going right rather than what is. The product is still really good.
Well, it's always been really good.
Yeah.
Um,
You just unfortunately hear more about the Salford situation or the
yeah,
tackle height or the video ref
well,
timings and stuff, don't
you
you?
know, and I do punditry for BBC Radio, Humberside and Merseyside, Hull FC, all the games, and the odd game here and there for Warrington or St Helens, because I know the caller Phil Kinsella, and yeah, I'd like to see the video decisions made a lot quicker, and I think we need to put some confidence in our officials to say, "You've seen that once. What did you see? Okay, so go with it. If
Yeah,
that's what you saw, you're not going to see. It's not going to change. I get if you've got three angles, look at all three, but don't
yeah,
look at one angle 10 times, and that's what's happening. And that's just a
yeah,
confidence thing. People will still complain.
yeah. Of course they will. Yeah, that's the life, innit?
Well,
Yeah,
they've always complained at the officials, you know.
yeah,
So don't think you're going to get out of getting complained at. That's your job, so to speak. As in,
yeah,
I think it's a tough job, and I wish they didn't get called as much. But they are the scapegoat because whatever decision they make, they're going to get half of the people on side and half the people offside. But the head-eye tackles, we're just penalising what's always been illegal. It's never been right to whack people
yeah,
around the head.
yeah. No, you're right. You're definitely right, mate.
and because of other things, that's probably speeded up the process. Um,
Yeah,
Obviously, players in a lot of sports have taken a situation where they think they've been unduly treated. Again,
yeah.
that's another conversation that could last days.
For another day, innit?
Um,
Yeah,
I knew what I was getting into, and I knew it was tough.
yeah,
And it's not something that I would do, but I do understand why people have done it.
yeah,
But it's just not for me. Um,
yeah,
but what they're doing, everybody says game's gone soft. 400 tackles a game, 6 foot 2, 3, 4 guys, 200 pound, you know what I mean, 15 stone, running faster than they ever did across the board
yeah.
into each other.
More often than they
But
ever did.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we focus on the game's gone soft because somebody got sin binned or sent off for one tackle, and we focus on that one tackle rather than the other 399 or 98 or 97. However many penalties, sin bins, cards we see in that game, it's
yeah,
still a minute fraction of the amount of collisions that we have. And people say the game's gone soft, and then try not to look like the barbaric by saying, I mean, I understand player welfare, but the game's gone soft. Well, no, then you don't understand player welfare, because then you
yeah,
understand that the game's as tough as it's ever been.
Yeah.
You know, physically. I'm not sure mentally,
Yeah.
but physically it's as tough as it's ever been. And all we're doing now is protecting players. And take officials and decisions and you know, tackle height out, and then money. Nobody's really got much to complain about our sport. It's great. It's fantastic. And I
It
still love
is.
it. I still love it's different. I mean, it is. It's just it changes every year. Every year they'll change a rule. They always have done.
Yeah.
I mean, before my time, but I hear my dad and people of his generation talk about great players of their generation that would, and I think great players would be great players in any era under
Yeah.
any rules because the skill sets are there. But unlimited tackles and 5 yard rule, which went to 10 yard in the middle of my career, so I experienced
Yeah.
both summer to winter rugby, 40-20s, and when there wasn't 40-20s, corner posting play for wingers. Now it's not in
Yeah.
play.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You know, I've got. I mean, I think the Ryan Hall, Josh Charnley, brilliant. They've just hit the 300 club. Very exclusive club. I'm proud to be part of. There's only 32 players that have ever played
Yeah.
in our competition scored more than 300 tries, and I didn't have to score all mine on mud heaps because at least technology got better with
Yeah.
groundkeeping, and I played part of my career in summer, but I played all of it with the goalpost in play. And I
Yeah.
get maybe I'd have scored more. I'd like to think I wouldn't have scored less if I'd have been able to dive in the corner. But I'd
Yeah.
also like to see some of the guys today playing under those on a January Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon with a slippy mitre ball, diving
Yeah.
into the corner, holding the ball one-handed when it's a
Yeah.
shiny mitre, not one of these grippy Stevies
Yeah.
that they have.
Yeah. The smooth balls.
And they wouldn't be able to, well, no, they'd struggle to do it. That's
Yeah.
why we didn't see it. So the game always changes. And the players and the generations just change with it. So it looks slightly different, but the essence of the game is still tough, lads, because it's a tough sport. Um, Putting the bodies on the line, we suffer for it later on in life, but it's worth it because if I couldn't have been a rugby player, I'd want to be a cricket player. But they're the two things I just wanted to do. So
Yeah.
I'm dead lucky. I'm dead privileged, and that's one of the reasons I don't think I could do anything against the sport because it gave me loads
Yeah.
of mates.
And what I'd say though, Owen, is you also give the sport a lot as well. So I get when you fellas say that, but it's a two-way street, mate. You had to still go and do them things and fit in them places. Although
Yeah, but
the game opened the door for you, you walked through it, didn't you?
yeah, it's like being a chief exec in having to make really tough decisions, but having to make really positive decisions. It must be wonderful knowing that some of the decisions you do pay the wages for 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people. But then it's really, really rubbish when you have to make redundancies.
Yeah.
But that's life. Life, it's not easy. and
No.
and and there has to be grafters, and there has to be people in suits, making decisions. And the higher up the chain you get, I suppose that the better the wage. But
A
I was
great
just,
responsibility in it.
yeah. But I've just been dead lucky that I did something that I went to school saying, "Oh, I'm a professional sportsman," because when I was a kid, it was rugby or cricket.
Yeah.
Or if I can't do that, I want to be a teacher. And I was dead
Right.
lucky I've done both. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to do, especially the teaching, um, for nothing. But if I hadn't been good enough, I think I'd have done the rugby for nothing because I was. That's how I
Yeah.
started. And
Yeah.
the cricket I did. I mean, once I turned professional, I didn't stop playing cricket. I only stopped when we went to summer rugby because then it was just too
Right.
much of an
Yeah,
overlap. And I just think sport's a wonderful thing. It widens your social circle, especially when you leave school. You don't realise when you're at school, you go to school with people that are gonna be in different circles to you once you're adults. Because some
yeah,
are going to be chief execs, maybe,
yeah, yeah,
or run their own businesses, and some are just going to be labourers.
yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with either, and
No,
everything in
no.
between. Some people are going to give heart attacks, and some people are going to save them.
You don't have
You
them.
know.
Yeah,
So, however, whether that's the person that serves you your fast food that gives you a heart attack, or whatever it is, it the world the world takes all sorts, doesn't it?
yeah.
And
That's the beauty of life and of sport, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So, but it's all got a bit philosophical, I'd say.
No, no, it's right though, mate. So, like, obviously, because you had a couple of uncles of not so much older than you, they probably told you that, just like my sisters told me. But you don't believe it till you live it, and then
Oh,
who you
yeah,
thought were your best mates, you see once a year, which still means they're your good mates because it's like you've never stopped talking.
yeah,
But that life does that sort of
yeah,
sliding doors, like you said.
yeah. And all the you best days of your life at school, and depends if you go into something that you really love, maybe it isn't. If you had I mean, if you had a tough childhood, it's not. Um, but I mean, I loved school because you were around your mates, and you've not got responsibilities, really.
No,
I mean, you look
no,
back
you
and you
haven't,
think,
have you?
oh, wow, I rock up or I wake up and I
Yeah.
go to school and get fed there, and I come home and I get fed there, and then anywhere that I want to go, either I get taken by school or by my mum and dad, or I have to go myself. And if I can't make it, I can't go, and that's all I have to worry about. you know,
Yeah.
it, your mum on back doorstep shouting your name for coming for tea, and because you were playing out, you were messing about with your mates,
Yeah.
um, climbing trees or playing football on backfield or rugby or cricket or whatever it may be.
Anything we could really want it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're not bad, and interspersed with going and playing with a different set of lads, more organised stuff because you're playing for your rugby team or your cricket team, or
Yeah.
you know. And then I got to do that as an adult, which is dead lucky. That's why I think it's dead lucky because I got to rock up and play rugby, which in a more organised environment, obviously, but it's what I've been doing as a kid. Jumpers for football, for post and all that kind of
Post.
scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Or your bike upside down. And
Yeah,
yeah.
well, where I'm playing with a different set of mates, a new set of mates that I didn't know but become mates for life. The camaraderie that you have with your teammates is fabulous, and it's reminiscent of those schoolmates that because you're just messing about, playing rugby, playing sport.
Yeah.
It's like
Before it's serious as well. So it's for pure joy, innit?
yeah. So and then
Yeah.
somebody says we'll pay you for that. You know, yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
But, so where was your first club, mate?
Amateur club,
Yeah.
Eastmoor. Um, Started when I was 9 or 10. Roundabouts when Wakey went to Wembley in '79,
Right.
and obviously there was a big influx. Partly probably because it was that age. It wasn't as organised back then. Of
Yeah.
the under 6s and under 8s that they have now. Um, and the town was probably buzzing a bit because they'd gone to Wembley, and a few of my mates. I remember I went training probably before then, and I came back with a bust nose, and my dad went, "It's too small, it's too young." because they'd been into my dad. Because Fred Lindop, the ex-referee, passed away a couple of years ago. He was Mr Eastmoor. He took loads of training and what have you. And he said, "Get your lad down." So I went, bust my nose. My dad didn't let me go. He said, "He's too small." Well, not too small, too young.
Yeah.
So a year, 18 months or so went by, and more of my mates were going as well. And I'm like, "Dad, I want to go. Let me go." "No, you're too young. Try again a bit later." Dad eventually went, "Right, go on, you can go." And it were only about 500-600 yards away, the rugby club.
Yeah.
So you go yourself. And so I went training, and that was it. So it had been about late 79-ish into 1980. I wasn't quite 10 probably. And started playing. Didn't play at school because in Wakefield we had a primary, then a middle school, and we only went to high school for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So I would have been at middle school, and we played football, but I don't think until maybe the last year, which would be now year 8, maybe year 7, that we might have had the odd rugby game. So my only rugby really came from playing amateur.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to do anything school-wise, like town trials, you kind of had to ask someone at the club that would know. So I didn't play town team under 11s, which is like they used to go to Wembley.
Yeah.
And a couple of years above us, a lad that went to my school played in the Wakefield town team that played at Wembley, which would have been 1980-ish.
Yeah.
My year would have been 81 for under 11s, and I wasn't even in the town team. And there was trials and played in the game, and there may have been trials or not, as in somebody was supposed to be looking,
Yeah.
but nothing through the school. And then under 13s was the same, which was my last year of middle school, so that would be year 8.
Yeah.
But somehow there was a proper organised trial, and someone at the club went to a different school, which was unusual because the majority of the lads went to the same school because it was
Same
just on our
school.
estate.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went to these trials and I got in the Wakefield town team. So I was playing for Eastmoor. Although one year I left and went to a team in Castleford, and then came back to Eastmoor. But barring a couple of, and it was a good team, the team in Cass. Tony Smith that played at Cass.
Yeah.
Gary Price, who was a Wakefield lad, he went there as well. So we had like 3 British Lions, future British Lions, playing in
Mad
this
that,
under
innit?
teams team. But yeah, I went to this trial, got into Wakey under 13s. So I'm playing club rugby, like I said, majority Eastmoor.
Yeah.
Played the Yorkshire under 13s. Um,
You notice a step up, Alan, when you're in these markers, like, or are you just still loving life and it's just a game to you still?
it's just the game, and I remember going back to school and saying, because we played Lancashire, somewhere in York, and in the Yorkshire team there was Paul Fletcher, who I'm still really good mates with, because we went on the Barlow tour together, and we those boys would catch up every year or two. And Neil Roebuck, who went and played for a bit at Cass, and I think it might have been Fev or Bradford, but he was a good player, Neil. Gary Price and myself. So future pros, and the Lancashire team had Ian Gildart and Mike Forshaw and a lad called Wayne Reid, who he was the hot property at the time, and he played majority at Salford because he couldn't get in the Wigan team when he signed as a 16 or 17. He'd be 17-year-old. Dennis Betts. So there's already starting to get some decent, names. Not that
Yeah.
they were going to become names. And we won at home, and they won when we played them over in Lancashire at Lee. And I went after the first game. I went back to the school and said to my headmaster, "Yeah, we won, and I was playing fullback, and so it's an individual position, obviously, unlike centre or wing."
Yeah.
And like the coach just said, obviously, if there was a Great Britain team, I'd be in the Great Britain team because you're the best fullback in the country, which is not really giving Cumbria much of a look in, which isn't fair. But it's also an amateur coach trying to bluff
big it up, innit?
confidence into to some quality young men, young players. And I was on cloud nine, but it was, and I suppose it was only then that I thought, oh, it'd be really good to be able to do this, And I started watching Trinity, as in going to games.
Yeah.
And again, by that time, I got to 13 and I was going to high school, so, and you're probably allowed to do a little bit more than we let generations now, and what have you. And I just became a proper rugby league fan, as well as loving playing. But then in the winter, I played rugby. There was a period up to about 11. I played football. So I was in the Cubs, and so I played for the school and the Cubs, but not a amateur team.
Yeah.
In the summer, I played cricket, but I tried all sorts. I went to the athletics club, and I was quick. So I went. Well, I know I'm quick, so I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
And I did the
It's
high
just
jump.
in you, mate, isn't it? You just love sport.
Yeah, and so I did the
Yeah.
high jump and something else, and uh, you know, and I don't know whether part of it was because I knew I was quick, but I didn't necessarily want to get beat because I was at an athletics club. But I just like trying different things as well. And, I went to play for a different cricket team when I was 12. So it'd been my last year. I was 12 or 13. No, I was 13 that summer. Um, and so I was still playing under 13s for the team I'd started playing cricket for. But then I went to this team to play second team, so with the men.
Yeah.
And
That 13.
well, no, I was 12 when I played my first game.
All right.
But
Because they'll be throwing some ball at you there, won't they? Like at
yeah,
pace,
but
I mean.
I've just, like I said, a bit of perspective is a 14-year-old kid's just hit a century for
No,
Rajasthan.
I get that. Yeah, yeah.
It is a sport where obviously when you're a man, you can bowl a bit faster and you can hit the ball a bit further. But the dynamics of the game aren't as physical as
Yeah.
as rugby. So you can play men's cricket. And this team in Slassinger's in Wakefield, I played for the under-16s, the under-18s, and the second team. So I could be playing 3-4 games a week, and then they had a hockey set up. So I went and tried hockey, hated it. You don't like everything, but
Yeah.
you just give anything and everything a go, really.
Do you reckon all them sports that you're involved in there helped you become the player you was?
Yeah, massively. Um, I think we did a lot about it when I was coaching, and I worked with the first team, but my main role at Salford was with the scholarship, the academy, then as the RFL developed new roles that as a head of youth, etc. And we used to go on, seminars and learning groups and all different kinds of things to widen our knowledge and experience. And we got introduced to long-term athletic development. And I mean, I'd played 15 years and I'd never heard the is it 15,000 hour rule that if you do something for long enough, you become an expert. And now they're saying I've just recently, if you do 100 hours a year, which equates to 18 minutes a day, practice at anything, piano, sprint technique, whatever it is, it will allow you to be in the top 2.5% in the world at what you do. Because the majority of people in the world aren't doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was a 10,000-hour rule in sport. You need that long-term athletic development, and you need to be doing something for 10,000 hours to become expert or close to being expert in it. But as they dig deeper into it, that isn't just necessarily doing rugby. If you do athletics, what you do in athletics, the hours that you spend there equate to time off your 10,000 hours in rugby because you're still athletically developing, if so to speak.
Yeah.
I was a wicket keeper. So I wasn't a big kid. Not that that matters, but I suppose when you start playing cricket, the wicket keepers all start being quite small and nimble, etc.
Agile. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was a wicket keeper. And when I was 13, 14, I was a late bloomer as well, so I hadn't gone through that growth spurt.
Yeah.
So there was a period when I was about 13 and my body hadn't started to change yet, but I'd already started doing this physical activity, that I could play an under 13s game, an under 16s game, an under 18s game, and a second team game. Now, the under 13s would be 16 overs, not much. And it was differently formatted, so everybody got to go. You know,
Okay.
everybody had to bowl apart from the wicket keeper.
Yeah.
Everybody got a bat. You went in for a limit for a certain amount of overs. And if you were out, you lost 8 runs, but you stayed in. So,
Okay.
so it was quite, looking back, good for development of young cricketers.
Yeah.
But the under 16s were 20 over games, but they were normal cricket. You go in, if
Yeah.
you're out, etc. And you play because it's the summer. You could play evenings, so your 16s and 18s games were probably might be a Tuesday night, might be a Thursday night. My 13s would be on a Sunday. Second team would be on a Saturday. Second team's 50 overs. That's
Right.
50 times 6. It's 300. I
Yeah.
was squatting 300 times every Saturday afternoon.
It's a good point, that actually, isn't it?
You don't think, but think of how wicket keepers stance, and you're going
Yeah.
into. I mean, I can't do it now. My knees don't bend that far.
I couldn't do it
Um,
then.
but um, every time it's a 20 over game, it's 120 squats.
Yeah.
I, I was doing 700 squats, and you're netting as well. In the practice, I was doing 700 squats a week, and not even thinking about it. So that athletic development,
Yeah.
and it's weird because we'd have conditioners with our scholarships, etc., and they'd be
Yeah.
talking about technique and posture and core stability, words we never heard of as a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
coaching, we had coaches, but we didn't get coached, so to speak. They
No. Yeah.
babysat us while we played games. Is that why my generation and the generations before that produced more rugby players, so to speak?
Probably, yeah. Less structured a bit. Yeah.
That whereas today we struggle to find halfbacks. We've got lots more athletes, but I mean, Lee Crooks was phenomenal.
Yeah.
What a ball playing forward. Kevin Ward was the best prop I ever played with. Carl Harrison wasn't there standing before the line, but offloads, big guys with good skills. And, we struggle to get that now.
Yeah.
And again, that's not a complaint. That's just me going back to, because the game changes. And when the
Yeah. Yeah.
game changes, our athletes change,
Yeah.
and how we're coaching our kids. So more of our kids are getting coached early.
Yeah.
But I also think they get to a point where, it's especially in systems where we maybe do coach it out of them, that rugby play.
Yeah.
And I
Play
like
what you see, sort of thing.
I like
Yeah.
play what you see. You know, but I do understand you have to have some structure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I just that athletic development was in that hand-eye coordination of being a wicket keeper. Does it transfer to being a rugby player? And
Of course it does.
the
Yeah, small
squats,
steps in it, the little
yeah,
pivots, and
and just that sporting environment as well.
yeah,
It helps. Meanwhile, it's Dave Michael's birthday. Dave Michael is a couple of years younger than me. We played cricket together.
right.
Um, and he went on and he played. We played Great Britain under 21s together. He played for Sheffield and Wakefield. Um, and I bet he'd say the same. Just being in that sporting environment, at worst, keeps you fit, happy, and widens your social group. And I used to say that to players. I used to have conversations with players at 16 that we were signing, which was a nice chat, and that we weren't signing, which is not a nice chat.
Yeah,
And genuinely used to say, but just play, just keep playing, because you never
yeah,
know. There's a Ryan Hall, Sam Tompkins, James Roby stories, because none of them got signed at 16.
no,
Um, and I think it's maybe part of the reason that they became so good, that the talent was always there, but they had a resilience as well,
yeah,
that not everything was given to them. Um, and, a steely determination. I mean, just the longevity of the three
yeah,
um,
no,
is phenomenal. But it's not just longevity. I mean, they're as good as there's
yeah, but
been.
I've been, aren't they?
Well,
Yeah,
there's as good as there's been in their period of time. There's
yeah,
not been a better fullback than Sam. There hasn't been a better winger. There's been, I'd say, Josh is up there level with
yeah,
him, um,
yeah.
and that equates with how many games he's played and how many tries he's played, and then James Roby is just an absolute machine.
He is, man. Yeah.
So
Them three people have inspired the likes of Charners and that to catch him and compete with him, haven't they?
yeah,
So
yeah,
Josh is up there with him, but it's
yeah,
probably half the reason he's up there is because of Hawley, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And maybe I suppose you don't know what your end total's going to be, but Martin was our guy. I mean, he's an all-time great, Martin Fire, and it was well documented that there was a rivalry, and there wasn't. It just seemed like there was, because I used to smack him a bit when we played against
Yeah,
each other.
but that was the game, Alan, wasn't it?
But that was the game, and
And it's a good
also,
narrative for fans as well, mate.
yeah, but also
Yeah.
I knew I probably had an edge on him physically. Um, I was always confident in what I could do, and I always wanted him to have to go out there and mark me as much as I was going to have to mark him. But the one thing I always knew was when you played against him, you were playing against the best. I mean, he was, and that lit 500 tries. It's phenomenal. You know,
Yeah.
um, that's like two. Well, that's barring the three that are at the top of the super. And I hate that they keep saying Super League charts, because they talk like rugby started in 1996, and there was never a
Yeah,
trophy.
none of yous existed.
There was never a trophy given, or a statistic before that. But on the Super League list, there's, I think, three people in the 200s. Them three. Because I know Paul Wellens and Keith Senior are on about 199. Martin's got two of them and half of somebody else. I mean, it's ridiculous. So
Yeah,
if you're gonna chase someone, if you're gonna aspire, if you're gonna what, not to be, but to be your own version of as good as you can be, because he was the best, as Roby's and Sam's and the likes have been in their era.
yeah.
So, but yeah, um, again, I digress. I'm good at that.
No, that's what the game's about now, mate. And it like putting them lads out there, and kids need to want to be like Sam, need to
Yeah,
want to be like Hawley. Like you want kids now to look at maybe Mikey Lewis now, don't you?
yeah,
And people like that. You need kids need someone to look at and want to be like, don't they?
Yeah, he's another one that's had a bit of adversity from what I can gather, and you listen to his story, and um, I was dead fortunate. For a couple of years, I was involved with England under 16s in 2016 and 17, and it's you you know that there's going to be someone makes it, but you also know there's going to be someone that comes from left field and doesn't. That's not in your
Yeah,
environment that does. And the first year we in the squad we had Cam Scott and Herbie Farnworth and Harry Newman all playing at centres. There's three quality centres. You can only play two of them anyway. Harry Smith, Shorrocks. So it's some good kids in the next year. Morgan Smithies and Jack Wellsby's and Josh Sim and the likes. I think Mikey Lewis was and Dom Young was that year as well. Jack Broadbent. I think
yeah,
Mikey Lewis was that year because it's the same year as my nephew. My nephew signed for Bradford and played
right,
in their academy. Then came out of the game a couple of years ago. Good cricketer, plays
yeah.
cricket. And so he'd be talking about different people then, 2 or 3 years after the, and then suddenly Mikey Lewis springs and he's like, and he didn't even get any rep on us. Yeah, he just come from nowhere, and you know, I think he wasn't wanted at Hull, which might have been his supportive club.
Saving, yeah.
You know what I mean, or one, but he's doing all right now, you know, and he's only
Without
young.
being rude, Alan, they probably sometimes, mate, you need to be told no, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, it's
And there's nothing wrong, like you said before, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, just because at that moment in time you weren't the right fit doesn't mean you won't be a right fit next time.
or if you're never the right fit, it means they were right.
Yeah,
And I used to say, I used to say, whatever you do, keep playing the game because it's a wonderful game and you can have that circle of friends and keep you fit. But we will keep checking in, you know, and you never know if that Sam Tompkins is round the corner. That suddenly, it's got, Sam Tompkins was on Wigan scholarship, um, wasn't signed
oh,
by
he nearly
Wigan.
come in time for witness, didn't he? Because Sean said he weren't good enough.
Well, here's the idiot that didn't sign him.
There's plenty of them, though, isn't there?
Well, you didn't see the player that Sam is now or has been
Yeah,
then. He was a small, timid
yeah,
scrum half. And this was 2005. It was the very first year of a new system, which was letters of interest. Sam Burgess' year was that as well, because I think he was the first year of letters of interest as well. And um, I put a letter of interest in for Sam Tompkins because we needed a scrum half. And I thought we might have a chance if Wigan don't want him because I think they might have had a England Academy number 7 and a England under 16s number 7, and Sam was in
right.
between. And you try and be strategic with some of your targets that you might get a go at because if if I was at Saints, I might have a go at the best kid in the country
Yeah,
along with Wigan and whoever leads. But at Salford, that wasn't going to happen.
yeah,
Um, they were, as in, they weren't going to come to us, you know, unless they
yeah,
were a Salford kid. And when that did happen 2 or 3 times, they were one of the better kids. We lost 2 of them because the big club still wanted them, and we weren't a
oh,
big
that's I was
club.
going to say that. Yeah,
And the one time we got one of them, you know.
yeah,
So, but we were able to run under 16s games before there was scholarship under 16s. Once you'd done all your signing, you were allowed to play what they called a foundation team,
right,
and it gave us an idea of these in a team environment because scholarship was only numbers of 12, so there was no team
yeah,
environment. It was all coaching, and anybody that was at another club that wasn't wanted could come in because Saints always ran one because it gave their lads an opportunity to at least play for Saints, but it wasn't really a signing vehicle for them. Leeds, I think the same. Wigan never ran one. They always had
right.
an absolute raft of quality kids, So they knew every year that there was 2 or 3 kids that were probably good enough to play pro, but not good enough to play for Wigan.
Right.
So they didn't sign at Wigan. And then it's like, if anybody else picks them up, then they pick them up. And I put a letter of interest in for Sam, and he came down with his dad, and I said, yeah, I want him to play in the foundation. We can have a look at him in our systems. And we got told, because I think another couple of clubs did the same thing, that a letter of interest meant that you wanted to sign them, not that you were interested.
Oh,
So
right.
from
Okay.
that point on, as in 2006, 2007, if you put a letter of interest in for someone, you had to offer them a contract.
Yeah.
And I never offered some kids the contract.
Right.
My solace is, neither did Wigan at that time.
Yeah.
And, in Sam's own words, he's told this story. He probably hasn't told the Salford bit of it, but he was rugby mad. And his older
Yeah.
brother was at Wigan, and he hung around their academy like a bad smell. And
Oh, when he come on this, he was honest about it, mate.
yeah,
He told me about
yeah.
it. Yeah.
He said, Sean Wayne had him picking up waters and everything. And then he got his chance, and suddenly he had that growth spurt. Because at 16, he was a small, timid lad. By the time he got to 18, he'd had that growth spurt. Suddenly that pace came from somewhere, that aggression, controlled, the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
he wasn't throwing his body weight around, because he still wasn't a big lad, he
Yeah.
was a skinny. But I'm on about the way he went into collisions was as though he was 3 stone heavier.
No, it was. Yeah. He had a nice arrogance about him, didn't he?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it showed confidence in his ability, which, well, he had every right to be that assured. He's been world class. He's
Hey, a
you
class
know,
lad, though, Alan. He's a good
yeah,
lad.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I coached him they had the regional camps. I coached
Yeah.
him then, and then just bumping into him, he's just rugby mad. I coached Joel in the Lancashire Academy. I was assistant coach for that in 2005. Yeah, with you, Chris Ashton's and Matty Smith, and I mean some quality lads that
Yeah.
they had pretty decent careers. Darryl Goulding. But yeah, I used to say, just play sport, and I did. I did with my cricket. I'm not sure Saints didn't know about it, but
What they don't know doesn't hurt, mate, does it?
well, and it didn't, and I never picked up any injuries, so and I never felt it affected me physically. Um, and I had loads of props telling me you don't do anything anyway, so they'll don't ring or whatever. So, but at the beginning of the cricket season was near the end of the rugby season, and then at the end of the cricket season, the beginning of the rugby season,
Yeah.
and I'd do a captain's run on a Saturday morning, jump in car, and bugger off to wherever, and play. A couple of years I was coming home to Yorkshire, because I moved to St Helens, and I was playing over in Yorkshire, so they weren't ever going to find out. But the last couple of years, I played for a St Helens team, and St Helens Cricket Club with Manchester Association League, and
Yeah.
I remember we played Bolton on a Saturday cricket, and we got robbed of the last ball of the game. Massive edge. I've caught it, stood up to the wicket. Umpire's not giving it. Fuming because we were the best 2 teams in the comp.
Yeah.
And we didn't get full points because cricket have a weird point system. Winning draws, losing draws, outright
Okay.
wins, all kinds of rubbish.
Yeah.
And I was fuming. And then the next day was the first game of the season, 1994, 95. And we played Doncaster, St Helens at home against Donny. You're thinking, yeah, it's going to be, should be a win. And Donny beat us. It's like one of the worst sporting weekends of my life. Oh, I was fuming, fuming. Oh, and it didn't matter. I was man of the match for the game. There's might be somebody at the door. I've got 2 Great Danes that bark like the biggest. Well, they are big, but like And then if anybody walks through the door, they're the biggest, softest things in the world. But yeah, I got man of the match in the game against Donny. Didn't care. Got a couple of tries. Didn't care. We lost to Donny. It was like that was the rise, or the start of the rise before the fall of Jamie Bloom, because he had an
Right.
absolute blinder.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of know why. And you didn't know the guy then. You get to know him afterwards, and he's actually, his own admission, he made a mistake, but in what he did, because he's a decent lad.
Yeah.
But it wasn't half helping him, and I remember going into Great Britain camp and other players, James Stedman at Cass, saying, "You've played against Donny. Jamie Bloom, you kicked him. He's carrying three people. 2 tackles later, he's going again." Oh, he ruined us. He absolutely ruined us. So yeah, it was a bad weekend. But yeah, and I'd probably continue to do that if rugby had stayed in the winter throughout my
Yeah.
career, or until someone said stop.
Caught up with you a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose it was part time the rugby then, and you could justify
Yeah.
it wasn't your full time job. But even so, it was. I just
Yeah.
enjoy
You're having a good time,
going.
mate, weren't you? That's what it's
Yeah,
about, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
So if we go back to signing for Wakey then, mate, that must have been quite a big moment for you with it being where you're from. What how did they come about signing you?
Well, I didn't sign. I
Right.
registered,
Okay.
as they do now. Registered as an amateur. Um, I'd played for Barla the year before. And before I played for Barla, clubs had started getting interested. I didn't play when I was 16. I had a
Yeah.
year off because I was playing for Yorkshire schoolboys at cricket, and it looked like cricket was ahead. And I was going to Yorkshire nets and all sorts through the winter, and just having fun. But I made a decision with my dad. Just put my charger in, boss. That if this is going to go ahead, we probably need to have a right good go at it now. So I stopped playing rugby, other than any town team, school stuff. And it was a teacher's strike anyway. So I never ended up being in consideration for like England under 16s or anything like that. And missed it so much. It was a really tough year in respects to God. I was like, oh, yeah, I love my rugby still, and went back to Eastmoor and played and had my growth spurt. And then suddenly, I think Hunslet were the first team. Dave Ward was coach. And then another team, Halifax. And then I got picked for Barla in the first year of playing under 19s. And because I'm a July baby, I used to play all season, 2 years younger and then 1 year younger, so to speak.
Right.
And we jumped up 2 years. So from throughout my youth career, we never played every year. It was like you went from
Yeah.
11s to 13s to 15s, which I quite like because you can't have this team building, super
Yeah.
teams, and a bit of adversity where you're coming up against bigger, more physical kids, and then you're in your own age group where it should be a bit easier. And I went up from 17s to 19s, played in a great Wakefield town team, won that comp, which obviously good. Played for Yorkshire, come against Cumbria, Lancashire, and we won that. And based off that, they pick a Great Britain team, and I was in the Barla Great Britain team, under 19s, but I was still 17. Pro team started being interested, but Barla were going on tour the next year. I'm thinking I should be going on that tour. I want to stay as an amateur. And Barla had a strength about it back then.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I remember even when I was a kid, they did. Yeah.
The last big tour for the under 19s was the '83 tour where Derek Fox and Gary Schofield went on that. Our tour, the likes of Tommy Martin, myself, Gary Conley, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was worth trying to keep your amateur status. So, and as this happens, more and more clubs are getting interested, and we start going having talks with them. And Wakefield, obviously being my hometown team, and they were the most persistent. They knew my dad, obviously, because he'd been at the club 20 years earlier, but there was some of the officials were still from back
Yeah,
then.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and they invited me to go watch a game, Salford away. And they used to throw players' wives and A-team coach for anybody that wanted to go and watch the game. So I went on that. And there at the game, one of the directors called me and went, Alan, come back on the first team coach. And you look back and you see, I know exactly what they were. They wanted me on
Yeah.
their own. And they sat me at front at coach, and I'm there with Topo and a bloke called Stuart Farrer. And they're like, well, it's your hometown team. And we'd already had talks and money talks, and the money's good, and blah, blah, blah. Um, and it had risen up. And I think they were hoping I'd say, yeah, okay. I went, well, I've got to talk to my dad. I'm not doing out without talking to him. I went home. He was straight on phone, and he's like, you're out of order. He talks with me, blah blah. Anyway, I left the room, left him to it, and uh, he came in and went, I've had a discussion, and they do want you, but we want to have a look, and I think it'd be good for you. Register as a player, and it means you can play in the A team, and you get more experience. It'd be good for your Barla stuff. You've not signed, so you keep your amateur status. So I did, and this was all the Sunday night. So Monday morning, I walked down from Eastmoor down to Bellevue, signed the registration forms. I had to get there before 12 o'clock because it was Challenge Cup deadline, and it didn't matter whether you were amateur or not, you wouldn't be able to play. So, and then that week on the Wednesday or Thursday, we were flying out to France with Barla to play the first of two test matches. So I was captain this year, played the year before, and Paul Derbyshire, who was going to be captain, was injured. It ended up on the tour. I was vice captain, but for these two games, because Darbs wasn't playing, I captained, which was a big honour. And I was supposed to be playing centre, because the year before I played fullback, but we had Gary Conley. I wanted to play centre. Gary was a great player.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's a stronger team with Gary at fullback and me in the centres. Although hindsight would probably be me at fullback and Gary in the centres. But and then Gary, but we were told we can't play any games that weekend before. Hence, I was available to go watch Wakefield against Salford,
Yeah.
etc. And Gary played for Saints 18, so they didn't take him. Dropped
All
him.
right, they were strict on it. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't take him. And so I played fullback, came back, and went to training. And I trained on the I signed on the Monday, trained on the Tuesday, went to France, came back, trained on the Tuesday again, trained Tuesday, Thursday, and I was playing in the A team on the Friday night. And which was all expected. It was, better than playing for these small under 19s, a higher level.
Yeah.
And we played against Featherstone. Physically, felt comfortable. We won. I found it all right. Not a massive step up. And I'll just carry this. You might want to go out. You might want to go use the loo with the dog. And so after the game, Topo said, "Come training in the morning with the first team." And I thought, yeah, this is just what they've tried to do before.
Yeah.
Get me involved around the first team, make me want to play inside. But I had no problems. It was brilliant. I was, in the first team environment. So I've gone, yep, great. And gone training the next morning. And I've had 4 or 5 sessions with them, and every 18 first team all train together. Then they separate. So I'm
Yeah,
already finding the rugby, like the A team, okay, but just more in awe of some of the guys that I'm training with. Like I'm
yeah,
training with Knocker Norton, um, and Jimmy Luluai, and I'm a Wakey supporter. I've been watching Wakey on the terraces for the last
yeah,
5 years, and Andy Wilson, that was his first year, and this relatively young. He'd have been about 21, 22. But exciting new prospect on the wing, and I'm like, suddenly I'm playing or training with him, and Steve Ella, Zip Ella, is at Trinity as well, and we finished the session and we're stretching down, and he comes over and just says, "I'm going to play on the bench tomorrow, Alan," and suddenly I've gone internally, "Whoa, that's huge." All the other news beforehand, it was like, okay, yeah, but that was like massive. So I've gone home, told my dad. It's like, oh, brilliant. Gone up to Eastmoor to watch up in age. Told all my mates who were in the under 19s and what have you,
yeah.
and they're all taking the mick. You probably come on wing and Flangy will rip your head off, and it's different level this,
Yeah,
and the weight of it's kind of like, yes, this is going to be. And we're playing Cass, and that was 88, 89 season. Cass, Darrell van der Veld's first season. And they were top of the league.
right.
And Widnes won the league that year.
Yeah,
They're second on the bounce. But Cass were the better team up until about February. They hadn't lost a game. And then they just fell off a cliff. Um, so it was a Cass away. And this is January, late January. So there's already played nearly 20 games because it had been probably a 50-game season.
yeah,
So to be unbeaten in that amount of games in 17, 18, 19, whatever it was, really good team. Grant Anderson, top, was scoring tries for fun at 6, and Ronnie Gibbs had just won a grand final with Manly, and was knocking people's heads off, and as in not swinging arms. I mean, like
yeah. Just being
through
physical.
through
Yeah,
through whiplash, hitting him in the chest,
yes.
and what have you. And all the lads are like, Flangy is going to do this and that to you, and I'm like, and I started to get nervous, and I very rarely got nervous. And I went to the game, down to Trinity to catch the team court, and it's only 20 minutes from Wakey to Cass.
Yeah,
And Topo goes, "Alan, come here," and sits me up front at the bus, and I says, "You're not on the bench." And my heart kind of sank a little bit for a fraction of a second when you started. Said Andy Mason's pulled out, who was the club captain. And so you're going to start in the centre. And I just didn't have time to get nervous because 5 minutes later we were pulling up at Weldon Road, getting off, and the change rooms at Cass aren't big now, but they were even smaller
yeah.
then. I think they knocked through and made a room somewhere else into the home sheds, and what used to be the home and away sheds into one.
All
So
right, okay.
if if you imagine the away sheds at Cass now aren't the biggest, and that used to
Yeah,
be both sheds, you can imagine you literally were sat on the bench and your knees were touching. Well, you sat on the seat and your knees were touching the bench in the middle that people were getting rubbed on.
right.
And if you're on the other side, their knees were touching. And the teams didn't warm up then.
Yeah,
You walked out on pitch and people would be chatting, and knocking Norton's from Cassie, he'd be talking to somebody that he knows in opposition and blah blah. And then you came in, you got stripped. You nearly had to take it in at phases because there wasn't room to people standing on the benches to get the shorts on. And then suddenly there was a bottle of sherry opened, and plastic cups and a little shot in the sherry, and go, and somebody take it, somebody go, no. Paul Malinder, one of the Wakey props, had a shot and then went, just gives another one. Knocker Norton must have sucked half a bottle of sherry. He was like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, just sat there thinking, what is going on?
And he said the same at Saints, but it was Pernod or GG's.
No, it was Sherry. It was Sherry
Yeah,
at Saints. But that was my first experience, and it's weird because me and Gary were training with Barla, so we'd already become mates.
yeah,
I'm disappointed that he didn't go to France the week before. That was the same day he made his debut for Saints. So we made our debuts. Forget the date, but on the very same day, him for Saints, me for Wakey. Then the following week, I played against Batley in Cup. Andy Mason, surprisingly, was fit again against Batley. He came straight back in. I went onto the bench. And again, well, the game against Cass I played and got battered. I mean, we got battered, but physically, it was like, whoa. 18, I thought, yeah, it's all right, no problems. Then suddenly I was in the right centre and up against Tony Marchant. Lovely lad, Tony. Good player, but not physical. And game's gone okay. I think they might have scored one down our side, but three down the other side in the first 20 minutes. Then we had 40 minutes where we scored, they didn't. And then they just went away from us again the last 15 minutes. So they probably scored 6, 7 tries.
yeah,
But in a clump at the beginning and a clump at the end of the game. And that clump at the beginning, I had not thought, I'm just playing the game.
yeah,
And after 20 minutes, Phil Eden was the other centre, came over and went, Topo's told us to swap. Okay. So I goes over to the left centre. He goes into the right centre. Half time, Topo comes to me and says, why did you swap centres? And I went, Phil Eden just said to swap. I didn't say that he'd said. He went, oh, just
yeah.
like this. Just wondered, but it seems to have worked. Phil Eden was getting battered out there
And I was fed up with it.
and was fed up with getting battered and getting beaten. And I'm not saying that we stopped him because I went over there because it scored down our side. But I do remember the first 20 minutes physically was tough. But I went on the other side and I had Sean Irwin and Ronnie Gibbs. Sean Irwin in the centre. And he went on tour a couple of years later. Good
Yeah,
player, Sean. And Ronnie Gibbs. And I'm coming on to short balls, just running lines. Mark
yeah,
Conway, scrum half, and he's saying, like, let's have the ball and your back rowers and your centres. You just got to hit lines. That
yeah,
was, it wasn't lots of pre-planned stuff. You play what you see, look, try and find space. So I'm trying to run in between people's shoulders and what have you. And by the time I've got to where the gap was, it's not there anymore. And Sean Irwin and Ronnie Gibbs are taking it in turns to tee off on me
right.
legally.
Yeah,
And after the game, I'm like, oh, wow. If that's what it's like every week, this is tough.
yeah,
Throughout my career, I can only really remember getting hit that hard by one other person, and that was Andy Platt on one occasion.
yeah,
And it might be because I learned not to
yeah,
run so upright, not to be such as big a target, a bit of experience. But I
yeah,
also think, I mean, Sean was he was an international centre. Like I say, he's a British Lion. He went on tour. He's a good player. And Ronnie Gibbs, grand final winner. Just
yeah.
his nickname was Rocket Ronnie Gibbs because he used to take off when he tackled.
Right.
He literally used to
Yeah,
take off and launch himself. And when he got it wrong, he'd take your head off. But
yeah,
invariably, he got it right, and he hit people underneath the ball in the ribs, and he hit for keeps. And like I said, I thought, oh, wow. And the next week we played Batley. It was a lot easier. But Batley were in the second division.
yeah.
In between that, I'd already had talks with Cass. On the Tuesday, I
Oh,
was in having talks with Cass Van de Velde, saying, really impressed with you. You know, I thought you play tough, and some of the things that I'm like, oh, God, yeah, I think it kept getting folded like a decorator's table. He was like, but he kept coming back.
Yeah,
And so, you know, suddenly it wasn't just Wakefield and Hunslet and this, it was Cass and then Leeds and played Batley, came on at second half, had a decent game. The next week, Topo went, I can't play anymore because every time I play, somebody else wants to buy you. Not that there was a transfer, but to sign
yeah,
you. And he's probably his best bet would have been to keep playing me because I was getting ingrained. I was, and you know, I scored my first try in the Batley game, and I'm walking back for the kick-off, and the fans that I was part of was jumping up and down because I've scored, and it was like I'm playing for my hometown team. It's
it's different. Yeah,
something I'm still dead proud, even though it was only 2 games, because I go to games now, and you know, as you don't pay because I've got a media card, what have you. But I used to pay to go and watch Wakey. I'm a fan of
yeah,
Wakey, and I played for lots of different teams. But the only team I supported is Wakefield. People in St Helens probably don't get that because of the
yeah.
length of time I was there. Um, Probably understand it more in Hull and Warrington and Salford. But you were Saints, and I'm like, yeah. And I played rugby,
But you're a working lad, ain't you?
but I'm a
Yeah,
working lad, and I'm a big believer. You know, if you're from St Helens, you support St Helens.
yeah,
If you're from Wakey, you support Wakey.
yeah, yeah.
You know, if you're from the west side of Hull, you
Yeah,
support
you do that.
Hull,
Yeah, yeah,
and so on the east side. But that becomes because that's the one. And as a St Helens player, them derbies were phenomenal, great, especially when we were the best 2 teams. I mean, Wigan were what a team, but there was a probably the lengthiest period of time out of all the other teams that challenged them was St Helens, and the derbies were phenomenal. But a whole derby's a whole derby, you know. It's you go out, get drunk, and you end up marrying somebody that's from the other side of the city, and suddenly you don't talk on 2 weekends of the year because that's what it's like.
it's that big. Yeah,
And I grew up in Yorkshire, and I grew up around the times of the last one out, turn the lights off,
yeah,
Challenge Cup final, and you know, and just recently Hull and Hull were top of the table, and it's not happened since 1984 and 1985, where 1 year Rovers won the league title, and then the following year Hull won the league title. But there was periods where they were 1 and 2, and that's 2 or 3 years after they'd been to Wembley and
yeah,
you know played, and they played in the John Player final. And I remember going to those games. Some of those
yeah,
I went to the Hull replay at Ellen Road, and like Hull was kind of like my second team because Dave Topless was a Wakefield player.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he was a Wakefield hero. And when he went to Hull, I was still a Wakefield supporter, but he kind of a bit of he goes
You
with
were
Topo as
attached to
well.
it. Yeah, yeah,
And they were a good team, and that a bit of that when you're a kid, you like watching better teams as well.
yeah,
I didn't desert Wakey, but you know, it was nice to go watch Hull
yeah,
um, when they're playing in the semi-final at Headingley Or because it was easy to get to from Wakey.
yeah,
And you know, so I'm a big you support your team. So
yeah,
everybody from St Helens and Wigan will argue till the blue in face it's the biggest derby. And it has been for a long time, competitiveness wise.
mm,
Won't ever argue that, you know, and
yeah,
that's a competitiveness that goes back to the finals in the 60s. And if you're born in Wigan, you support Wigan.
yeah,
And if you're born in St Helens, you support St Helens. It's a local rivalry. It's
yeah,
not a proper derby. I get that it's been ordained by the Lord of Derby and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But Liverpool, Everton, City United, Arsenal, Tottenham don't have to be ordained by anybody because they're proper derbies.
It's the derbies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So do you know if
And
you'd have signed for Castle, how would that have gone down? That
I couldn't do it.
yeah, because I
Well, I
imagine
mean, I
you'd have got
could.
all the shit for that, wouldn't you?
I could. The decisions I made were based on what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
And that's why I look back and say Topo made the mistake and not playing me anymore. I probably would have still left. The money was getting better. because they knew the competition was getting stronger.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the big hitters came in, Leeds, who on the field weren't as big a hitters, but they'd always been. The two big teams were Wigan and Leeds clubs. Widnes were the best team at that time. They'd won the league the year before, and they went on to win it that season as well. So it was just before the start. I mean, that's timing for you, innit? I signed for Saints just at the beginning of Wigan's dominance. It's like the worst timing in the world for me and that generation of lads that all went there at that time. But I had talks with Wigan, and to this day, my dad still tells a story. Oh, he should have gone to Wigan and do this, that, the other. But I didn't. Because he advised me. But ultimately, the decision was mine. And as I went and I had talks at Leeds, and Mal Bealey was coach, and he'd already been to Wigan, and Wigan had said, whatever Sunday pays, we'll top it. And Mal went, looks like he's going to Wigan then. And it didn't put me off. It put me off. But I was like, I wanted him to want me, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But probably it doesn't articulate in that way in your head at that. It was just like something just didn't sit there.
Yeah.
And then I went and I went and I talked with Saints, and we would watch the game and sat down, and it was the full, we want you, and you felt wanted and felt welcomed. And then we went in and had talks, and Alex Murphy, who I'd heard all about, but the first time I'd met him was Alex Murphy, charming, and said everything. Oh, we can build a team around you. We see this, that, as in not because of position, but because of the youth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And obviously, and it helped. We played the second test against France the day before, and Gary was back in the team, so he went at full back, and I was in the centre, and I scored a hat trick, captained the team. So I was like about as sellable as I could make myself.
Yeah.
And if it had been Leeds, then maybe they'd have been different or whatever. And when I went to Wigan, Maurice Lindsay wasn't there. So we were shown around with Derek Standish, the scout, and Graham Law. And when we left, he said, "You've got to come back, and we need to talk figures. All I've been told to tell you is whatever anybody offers you, we'll beat, and then Maurice will deal with the rest." And that's what Graham Law's final words. And off we went. And that's resonated with my dad more than me.
Yeah.
And I'm listening, and the money's going up at Saints, and then we had a conversation, me and my dad, and Joe Pick, the chairman at the time, and Murph left the room, and we're talking. My dad's going, "We need to go back to Wigan," and I went, "I want to sign." "Oh, go back." I went, "Dad, my decision. I want to sign." So they came back in, said we'd sign. I did. Amateur form, I mean the professional forms, went in the safe, dated for the right dates because we were going on the Barla tour. And I signed. And then years later, Ian Pickavance plays for Saints, and Joe Pickavance is his granddad. And he said, "Oh yeah, Joe tells this story about when you signed," and he says like, "Oh, they really because they just missed out on Jonathan Davis." And again, not comparing myself, because he was coming from a different era. It was like the top rugby union, but I was thought to be one of the top amateurs coming in that period when that was a thing. You signed at 17 if you'd been in England schoolboys, or you signed as from that Barla infrastructure, or you signed from rugby union if you wanted to get OK money. And Picky tells a story exactly like it was, and then says, "And whilst I was telling my dad I wanted to sign, he was outside with Alex saying, we can go to 25. We can go. So I could have got an extra £5,000.
Yeah.
Don't care. Don't care.
Yeah.
Best decision I ever made. Because,
Yeah.
I could have won more trophies and played for Great Britain if I'd got Wigan. Or I could have languished in an A team and ended up somewhere else. And
Yeah.
sliding doors, we'll never know. But I'll never get hung up about the fact that it woulda, coulda, shouldas. It's like
Yeah.
Saints weren't the team that they are now. You
Yeah.
know, um, they had the potential to be a sleeping giant to support them, but the style of football that Saints are synonymous with,
Yeah.
I probably wasn't aware of as much because I wasn't from that area, but it just suited me down to the ground.
Yeah.
They were all about throwing the ball about, pace, you know, they like eyes up rugby, play what you see. Alex Murphy, who wasn't the best coach I ever played with, but was as brave a coach as I'd ever had coached me. Because he was in the team as a 16-year-old lad and was given that opportunity. He always had that philosophy of if you're good enough, you're old enough. He
Yeah.
didn't worry. He was also the biggest name at the club, and eventually got sacked. But I don't think he ever made a decision based on if I make this wrong, I'll get sacked. And I know other coaches do that, and you have
Yeah.
to a degree.
Yeah.
If I play this kid and it goes wrong, that's another loss, and that's five on the bounce, and I might lose my job. And that kid don't get picked. Do you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
does happen now. Then
Yeah.
I don't think Murph ever made that. He played Gaz as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
You're good enough. You're old enough. You know, Gaz played great rugby, barring one game at Wembley, which he talked about, and
Yeah.
obviously me and him best mates. He just he's maybe the only person that's more laid back than me. He just like, yeah.
Do you
I
know what,
know
mate? That's like, yeah, how good he is as a player. Like, he's not bothered, is he?
just honestly,
Yeah.
but it meant a lot to him,
Yeah.
and he was
No, he's a class
gutted.
fella, mate. Yeah, absolute
He was
gem.
gutted because he wants to play well, he wants to win, he wants to
Yeah.
succeed. Um, Same as everybody as well, especially when because for yourself, but also you don't want to let the people around you down.
Yeah.
And he didn't. But I've no doubts. Everybody felt I didn't play, and I felt like it was heartbreaking because of the nature of that game. But Murph was good. He played you, and I signed the amateur forms on the Sunday, and it was like being at Wakefield again. He went, "We've got to get training." I wasn't cleared. They hadn't deregistered me with Wakefield, so it couldn't be made official until they deregistered me. So they went to Wakefield, said, "Look, he's signed. Will you release him?" So Wakefield said, "We'll release him if as long as he don't play against us this year," which I was a bit gutted at, but also a bit of a compliment.
Yeah.
Um, and that happened. They were training on the Tuesday, so I went to training, took like me boots and whatever, but it wasn't training. Gas comes running off the training part. They're just playing a bit of touch footy before they do a bit of a team run because they've got a game the
Yeah.
next day. And I'm just in civvies. I've not got my training gear. Didn't train. Big hug. Oh, you signed well. Brilliant. Because we'd already become pretty close through the
Yeah.
bar of stuff. And went in, dropped some kit off, got introduced to a few more of the players, drove up. Well, I mean, I hadn't even passed my test then. So my dad was driving. And we drove home. Before we drove, Murph went, "We've got a game. Obviously, I'm trying to introduce you to the first team. Come to the game, it'd be really good. You've got your boots here and everything." So, it hit it from the kind of by making me bring my boots for the kit man on the Tuesday. I turn up and expecting, he said, "It's a shirt and tie." Because you had to play 12 games to get a blazer.
Okay.
And so I had to come in a shirt and tie. and turning up, and he greets me, takes me into the sheds, and they used to have, the telephone phone-ins
Yeah.
lines, the talk lines. Stuart Pike, who commentates for Sky now,
Yeah.
he later became a director for a short period at Saints, but he wasn't as director then, and he ran the talk line. He went, "Can I do an interview? New signing." So I went and did that, and it was before Murph had collared me. And so I'm going, yeah, really excited, really pleased, obviously, blah, 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 Alex Murphy this, and some great players, and obviously I know Gary, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
not done many interviews, so you hope you're saying the right things, And it was true, because I've made the decision. Murph had sold it to me,
Yeah.
so I was really looking forward to, obviously, every aspect. Went back down the steps towards the sheds, and Murph went, "Alan," and went, "I'm going to play you tonight, mate. You're on the wing." And it's like an hour and 45 minutes before the game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, all right. So that was it. I went and told my dad. It's like, wow, right, okay. I think he was expected to sit in stands and watch the game with me. And made my debut. Gaz was at fullback. I was right wing. So we were sat next to each other in changing rooms.
Yeah.
And that's the only times we went in the first team changing rooms, me and Gaz, was on match day. Because on training days, we had our spots in the 18
Right.
changing rooms. I didn't have a spot in the 18 changing rooms because I've not trained yet. But
Yeah.
I sat next to Gaz there. So the next time we trained, I sat next to Gaz again. And it was in the 18 sheds. And until we went full time, never came out of there. Gaz had gone to Wigan, all his time at Saints. Me and him were in there. I stayed in there, so I saw the next generation of young lads coming through, like Danny Arnold and Andy Haig.
Yeah.
Because some of the lads that went on tour, Peter Atherton, Daz O'Brien, played a handful of first team games. That was our sheds. So we just stayed in there. And then we went full time. So then everything changed, and we went under the stand, and everything moved. But yeah, it was just no time to think about it. Make your debut and you're off, and it went all right. So
Yeah.
that was the start of the majority of my career. Obviously, at St Helens.
Yeah. So what were them big games like for you playing for a club that wasn't your club, even though they go on to become the main club of your career? Because cup finals and that, mate, I get like, especially the players that are still playing, they have to sort of be media and book answers, don't they? But they're not just normal days and weeks, mate, are they?
Well, to be fair, I didn't realize I was doing this at the time. But then when you go to another club, and I'm a lot older. I'm still young, 27, but a lot older compared to 18 then. Um, I got to the end of that season, and I'm playing for Saints, and I only missed a couple of games. One through injury, and two through being cup tied. So I played 8 games, but I'm still living in Wakefield. And there was another Wakefield lad that had signed, Mark Webster. So a lot of the Tuesday night, Thursday night travellings, I used to come with him because I didn't pass my test till the season was over in May. And then we were preparing to go to Australia with Barla. Before we went to that, I'd already spoke to the club and said, I'm moving to St Helens. I was it was part time, but I'd done 3 months of jumping in a car and sitting on M62 and getting home at
Yeah.
11 o'clock at night. And, I think one week I made 6 journeys from Yorkshire from Wakey over to St Helens. Because I played a couple of A-team games as well. So, I might have had to go for physio on a Monday, train on a Tuesday, played A-team on a Wednesday, train on a Thursday,
Yeah.
didn't go Friday, captains run on a Saturday, and we had a home game on a Sunday. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm
Yeah.
moving. finished my college course that summer, going to Australia. It's, University of Life. It's like, it's going to be a job. I'd been offered a job um, if I moved to St Helens. So it felt like my team then. I was living in the
Yeah.
town. Some people in St Helens didn't know where I'd come from anyway, so there was like some of them thought I was a local lad anyway, and I felt like the next best thing to that.
Yeah.
I embraced being there, and then ended up living there for nearly 20 years. Um, and we just felt like my club.
Yeah.
But I think you should, and maybe everybody does, maybe some don't. But once you make the decision, it's all in.
Yeah.
So, and I missed my mates, and I went back to Wakefield when I could, and I saw my mum and dad and my mates, and it was all, they're still your mates.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, my job, and I could have found a full-time job in Wakey, but my bigger earner, or potential earner, if I'm going to play first team, was still the part-time job.
Yeah.
Um, and so I didn't even really think about it. It was just a no-brainer. It was like, yeah, I'm going to move, but why not?
Yeah.
I've got nothing that to to stop me moving. There was plenty to keep me in Wakefield because of my family, but
Yeah.
they're still be my family, and
Yeah. No matter where you go. Yeah.
I'm not one of these. Although I suppose I didn't know that at the time, but I'm not one of these homesick.
Yeah.
I don't need to be near, um, which maybe upset my mum more than me because she might have fancied, God rest her soul, a couple more phone calls a week than I gave her.
Yeah.
But we got to the stage where if I don't hear from him, I know he's all right.
Yeah.
And so I was 18 when I signed, but by the time I come back off the tour, I was 19 out in Australia. I was 19, so it was like exciting,
Yeah.
Saints put me up in digs. They said, "You got 3 months. You got to find somewhere to live." So I was 19 years old. I got a mortgage, found a little two-down house um, at the back of town. Um, my new best mate, so to speak, Gary, was
Yeah.
his dad had a pub in town right next to the bus station of the Swan. It was like 3 minutes to Gaz. I was working at St Helens Glasser with a major sponsor. The owner was a new director, Tony Ryan. He gave me a job. I thought he might give me an easy job. I was labouring on their site there. So I had part-time jobs when I was at college, but I had a full-time job, and which was rubbish money and hard work. I had a part-time job which was loads better money. I mean, it's if I didn't play first team, you used to get. I got my signing on fee, which was okay,
Yeah.
and then I had a yearly check, which you got yearly. It wasn't spread out because it was too small to spread out, so to speak. And you'd be like,
Yeah.
some of them lads were on 2 grand. I think mine were 3,344 for the 5-year contract because I got a good signing on fee, and then incentive based, which I'd still like to see in the game. Maybe we won't be on our backside as much because I think we overpay our players. Some players are worth
Possibly.
every penny,
Yeah.
but not all of them, and I'm not a big fan of. Well, that's your contract. You can do what you want now. We wanted to play, and we played busted. I think there's some players now. Look at again, Sam Tompkins, stuff that he was doing with his knee, and he wants to play rugby. He just wants to play rugby, and he wants to win.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't need winning money. But some players, I think, as an incentive maybe do, because
Yeah,
and that's where I think physically they're way past where a lot of my generation were. I mean, there were the odd ones that look like they would play now. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And but there were some guys that the game 5 meters it was slower. But we were also going digging holes through the week, and I'm not sure that there's
exactly that. Yeah,
and it's a comparison that's given a lot now. Oh, would you survive in the modern game? And I think the majority of players would. There'd be odd
yeah,
players that wouldn't, just like there'd be odd players that wouldn't survive in our game. If
yeah,
anything, maybe more, because and I know social media doesn't help it, etc. But our professional rugby players are nowhere near where the footballers are, thank God. But they're still in a little bit of a protected bubble nowadays,
yeah,
and they can't. They're more professional, which is good for them as athletes, but not great for the experience that we had of that
yeah.
camaraderie and win or lose on the booze and that pulling together and what have you. Um, and yeah, I think some players want to play at 100% fit now.
Yeah.
How would they do that if they had to go and work 9 till 5 in whatever job? If you get an office job, great, but the majority of us were from working class council estates
Physical jobs, mate, innit?
that some had educations, but a lot didn't have a great education, you know.
Yeah,
And so they were very manual, the jobs. And we trained, we didn't have lots of time on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, but physically they were still ahead of Joe Bloggs on the street because they were playing rugby and there were manual jobs. And I'm swinging a pickaxe as fewer times as I possibly can. I'll also say, because you don't go there wanting to, boss says dig a hole. You don't go right, great, boom, 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 boom. You start shoveling ground every time he looks at you. Unless he puts a time limit on how
yeah,
long you've got or how deep it's got to be, you make that job last as long as you can because it's
yeah.
hard, it's physical, and but doing that still was like these guys doing weights now.
Well, it was, yeah, it's fact, isn't it?
You know, Gary was a bricker. He's going in, and I'm sure as an apprentice, he was doing the job of a labourer
Yeah,
to begin with for a bricky as he learned, and he's teaching him what to do, but then being told go and throw a mix on, and shoveling a load of sand and cement into a mixer. It's like 3 sets of 10 on that machine or on this machine. So there was a ruggedness that you got from
yeah,
everyday living for a lot of the guys, because not many people were in the gym. You got the odd Vintic Aurelius was doing that in
yeah,
the 50s and 60s, and he was one of the few. But the game didn't really progress scientifically in that conditioning element much for 30 years. You
yeah,
know, um, we had Frankie Barra, who played with and against the Vintic Aureliuses in the 60s as one of the Saints coaches, tying a piece of rope around your waist with a tyre on the back of it, running up the hills at
yeah,
Sherwood. And now we've got conditioners with sports science degrees pulling a sledge with a weight on it.
yeah,
And on a smoother surface, but with a heavier weight. So the friction is very similar. Still,
yeah.
it's that extra effort, the actual common sense science behind it is very much the same, you know.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah, yeah,
So, but we as a sport weren't where we are now physically, but because of what we had to do, and I do think there's some players now complain about how many games you have to play. Not every
It's one of my
player,
things. You were playing in 5, 6 cup competitions 2 or 3 times a week,
yeah.
and team rotation doesn't exist then, how did it?
I get that the way they train now is because I've been the coach doing some of that
Yeah,
can be more physical. and what have you, without doubt. But I would much rather play than train any day of the week.
Yeah.
I loved playing. I hated losing. So there's a good mix for incentive. And I never did anything because it was the most money. I did it because it was the right move for me, whether it
Yeah.
was an integrity thing or a feeling thing. I left Saints on an integrity thing. I signed for Saints on a feeling thing. It felt like the right place. I have no doubts. History tells me that I would have got more money at Wigan. In hindsight, I would have got more money at Saints.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Never bothered me. They
Yeah.
got to a figure that I was happy with,
Yeah.
at a club that I was happy with. And then,
That's
I
all over
mean,
your face when you speak about St Helens, by the way. Like you can see how good the time it was.
oh, I mean, I heard why how I left, and I never really speak about that because it wasn't in the best way. Nothing to do with anything I'd done, but it
Yeah.
hurt me at the time. But I feel comfortable with why I left, with my integrity.
Yeah.
And I got offered a huge contract. Didn't negotiate it, just offered it. At Hull, who were the only club daft enough to pay the transfer fee. Saints were
Yeah.
asking as well. Again, another reason that bothered me because the reasons why I left St Helens, and yet they still got paid for it. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
but that's by the by. Um, but it's
Did you
also
see
very,
the dirty side of the sport then without going into it, mate? Did you see the business side of the sport then? And did you
yeah.
realise that you
Well,
the
I,
player isn't enough sometimes?
I saw that before that. I mean, it happened a little
Yeah.
bit to me and Gaz. Um, our progressions were very similar. Um, I think when he made his Great Britain debut, I got told 2 or 3 years later David Howells was the Great Britain manager with Mal Reilly as coach, and he told me he then came to St Helens and as chief exec, and he went, Mal was looking at picking you. And when he told me, I was already by that time I'd become an international.
Yeah.
He was looking at picking you against Papua New Guinea, which is the game Gary played in, and made his debut. And it was right at the beginning of the season. I'd started really, really well, scoring tries, and we played Trafford Borough in the Lancashire Cup, and we won 102 points to 4. They scored or 6. They scored 1 try. So it's a nothing game, as in we're always going to win it,
Yeah.
and it's hard for Trafford, and not many players get anything out of that game other than a bit of a run out, maybe. And about 2 minutes before half time, I've made a break, and I've got to full back, and I've Tira Party screaming up on me outside, and I'm trying to defend and get the fullback to go off me to Tier, and it didn't. So I end up passing too late and going into collision where I could have drawn and passed him and not even gone into the collision.
Yeah.
And I snapped my shoe shirt.
All right.
And
Okay.
it's just a rugby tackle.
Yeah.
And I'd been to Loughborough with Great Britain under 21s the year before, and they said there might be a weakness in certain areas, and that might have been one of them. It's sport, it's rugby. I was gutted, and I'd just been selected for Yorkshire, which would have been my first rep honours. And Mal really had been at the game the week before. Again, I'd got a man of the match and got a couple of tries, and I was marking Desi Drummond, who I still held up as he was past his
Yeah.
best, but not at his best. He was still Desi Drummond. He was,
Yeah.
um, one of my heroes. I'd grown up watching him playing the Invincibles and, on Superstars. And then suddenly we were having a beer in the chat after games, as we all teams did. You know what I mean? And I got to
Still
know
blow
him.
you up though, I bet, didn't it?
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
you fanboy. You don't lose
Yeah.
that with
Yeah.
those ones, like I said, Knocker Norton and Jimmy Luluai and Steve Ella, I had three, at Wakey, and only a short period of time, and another one in Dave Topless as my coach. Then at St Helens, not so much in the team. Do you know what I mean? But Murph as a coach became, and then you get to know how good some of those players were, Shane Coopers and your Paul Laughlin's, and and the likes. But you're up against the likes of Ellery and Desi, and fortunate enough to get to know them even better in other aspects after your career, or during your career. And I still held a great amount of value in, if you play well against Desi, it means a little bit more than against somebody else.
Your box. Yeah.
That's and what have you. And Mal had been at the game, and Housie said he was ready to pick you. And Peter Fox had already selected me for York. My paperwork came through, and we were supposed to play that Wednesday. So we played the Lancashire Cup on the Sunday, and then it was the very last Rodstock, as it was, War of the Roses, Yorkshire, Lancashire, until they stopped it for like 9 years. Brought it back in about 2000 for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So it'd been my first opportunity to play with Gary Schofield and Ellery Hanley and all that. I was gutted that I missed out on that, because I knew I was missing out on it before I came out of the operation. I had an arthroscope on the Tuesday, and then afterwards I come round and the surgeon said, "You've snapped your cruciate. It's pulled off at the back. So it's not snapped in the middle, it's pulled off at the back." And obviously it attaches to the top of your tib and to the bottom of your femur. So I'm not sure at which end, but it'd come away.
Yeah.
And that's probably why it was painful for a little bit, like you twist your knee and it's a little bit of a. I passed it to Tierney, he scores, so we're kicking a goal, and then I've hobbled back for the kick-off, try to run it off, and it's half-time, put a bit of ice on it, as you do, come out and finish the game, scored a hat-trick, which isn't a brag. It's 100 and something to 6. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were about 4 of us scored. It was, but just thought, oh yeah, tweak me knee, I'm all right. Carried on, finished the game. Had a pint afterwards, as you did back then. I'm okay. Woke up the next morning, and my knee, you couldn't tell the difference between the top of my thigh to my ankle. It just went
It
straight
just went
down.
massive, did it?
Huge, loads of swelling. Phoned the physio, Jeanette. She went, right, okay. I'll get you in to see somebody. Went and saw them. They went, right, come in tomorrow. Arthroscope, went in, had a look at what was going on in there, found out cruciate's gone. And he says, right, so do you know what it is? And I've gone, not really. It's the same as what Paul Gascoigne's done. Right, okay. And all I thought in my head is, he's having a really bad timing. He's struggling. He's up, he's not. And it wasn't that long after, I suppose. And we'd had a couple of players at the club before I joined have it. Chris Arkwright got an infection, so that's why. But he was read his last rites. It was in a bad way. And John Neal, really tough Cumbrian prop, was out for about 18 months with a knee reconstruction. Gaz is struggling, and he's the one that's famous in the news. And the surgeons talking to me and saying, we can see how it goes, see if it holds up. Some people, it don't, once the swelling's gone, etc. If your knee's stable, you can get away with it. Or you can have a reconstruction. Or you can give it a go, and if it's no good, have the reconstruction. So, 21 years old, I've gone, let's see how it goes then.
Yeah.
Out for about 5 weeks whilst it settles down, do a load of rehab. Come back and play. Absolutely fine. Great. Let's go. Boom. by the end of that year, I've got an alliance tour, which wouldn't happen if, and I ended up making, so I missed that Papua New Guinea game, but ended up
Yeah.
making my debut against France in the March. Missed out on the original selection, which I was gutted about, but was the first person to get called into the squad. It was still 3-4 weeks before we went to Australia, so you kind of feel like, you know, I think me and Derek Fox were the two that were pulled in
Right.
before we went, and then there was quite a few came out as replacements: Steve McNamara, David Myers, Carl Harrison. I mean, we're talking loads of quality that didn't make that original squad. So, and I would never have been on that tour if I'd have had my reconstruction, because you're thinking it's going to be, they'd say it was 9 to 12 months. What was the general rule of thumb, and I knew people that was still 18 months. So I was made up with the decision I made.
Yeah.
Started having more problems a year later. Had it cleaned out again. So every time it shifts and it's like that, I keep
Yeah.
taking more cartilage until there's none left. So I had another 3 arthroscopes over 4 years before it was just unstable all the time. So I ended up
Yeah.
having the reconstruction, and
Right.
now I need new knees.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's loads of rugby players that don't have reconstructions that need new knees. The game, that's the
As
game.
well. Yeah. Yeah.
It's, so again, sliding doors, could have had the didn't. Might have better knees now. Might have had a better career if I'd have had it straight away, because the op was a
It was
success when
worse.
I had it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gone on that 92 tour. you
Exactly.
know.
Which
Um,
and it's a nice part of the journey for you as well, mate, because you're
well,
hitting the mark. Because
bit of
you,
adversity.
you're getting like I'm quite sentimental, mate. So I'd have like memorabilia and that. Are you into that sort of thing? Are you a jersey keeper or?
I've given loads away. I've kept some. I've got a couple. There's only a couple more that I probably wouldn't mind getting framed. I had them in a bag for ages and ages and ages, and medals, and uh, got more, unfortunately, more runners up than I have winners, but I've got some winners.
Yeah.
And it's only about 12 years ago, I got some shirts framed to put up in the office
Yeah.
um, at Salford, because I got kids coming in who didn't even know I played. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's
And
not. I was just joking, mate. Yeah.
look, there's people at St Helens that didn't play professionally doing similar jobs, so they can't get the shirts. They have the advantage of they're doing the job at St Helens. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to sell the club any way I can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, I might have a kid or a parent and look up and at least think, oh well, he might know what he's on about, and blag him, so to speak. So I don't know if you can. Uh, the first one I got up was,
Yeah.
if you can see,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's now up in the kitchen, and that's the only one I've got in the house up downstairs. Since we've got an office upstairs, I've put the other ones, and then I got 6 other shirts, but I got them same as that. That shirt is my first shirt, first test against Australia in '94 when we beat Australia with 12 men. Beating him with 14 men would be hard enough. On the pitch at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was a special game, obviously. Well, iconic moment for Jiffy scoring that try, and just being
Yeah.
part of that, and then and I thought, rather than getting 2 framed, I'll get 2 shirts in the same frame. So the frame's a bit bigger, so it folds halfway. So this half is my shirt, and the other half is, I wanted Mal Meningas because I marked Mal in the first and
Yeah.
second test, but in the third test, we swapped over. I don't know how, because they're both better centres than me. I mean, I was playing on the wing at the time, but obviously
Yeah.
I played enough in my career in the centres as well. But bloody hell, Gary Conley and Paul Newell. played centres in that Test series.
Yeah.
But the only person that played centre in all 3 games was me. God, again, I don't know how I blagged it, but somehow, I think, again, Ellery wanted his best players out on the field.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he knew he might not have been, and he wasn't at Saints at the time, but he might not have been fit. And I'm playing on the wing, but he had Martin, Jason, and myself.
Yeah.
And I was probably in better form than them two at that current period in time. Not a better player.
Yeah.
I was top of the try scoring list. And as wingers,
Yeah.
that's what you were judged with.
Yeah. It's your bread and butter, mate, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially more so, the job's not changed, just the emphasis coaches put on it now.
Yeah.
As in they put more emphasis on those early carries, getting you.
Yeah.
We always had
I
to
know
do them.
I was gonna say you were still doing that though. Like you said,
Exactly.
it just wasn't highlighted. Yeah.
It's the emphasis that I think coaches put you in the team then to score tries.
Yeah.
So we weren't as big as Ryan Hall,
Mm.
hence we could shift. We were quicker than Ryan. A
Yeah.
lot, and I don't just mean us three. A lot more wingers had pace, were slighter. So if you got a good kick chase on them, they didn't give you much going forward
Yeah.
at the other end of the field. And Martin wasn't small. Martin 6'2", and I mean, look at that try he scored at Wembley in '94
Yeah.
Challenge Cup final. That was Martin taking a dummy half carry or first receiver carry in his
Yeah.
own 20. That's not what Martin's well known for,
No.
but it is. Because where do you think a lot of his tries come from? Because the guy could score from his own half.
Yeah.
We were all expected to probably do that. When do you see wingers now score from your own half?
Rare, isn't it? Yeah. Rare.
Burgess maybe gets a couple. Tom Johnson
Yeah.
is a bit of an old school winger
Yeah.
because the shape of our wingers and the emphasis that what there's has changed to
Yeah.
suit the game, and yeah, that's the evolution of the game. That's not saying the players are, are better, worse. They're just different because what they're being asked to be is different.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked coaches of the time, what they wanted the wingers to do was to score tries.
All tries. Yeah.
And at that time, I was flying. So I think Newey being out probably helped. He wanted people that were in form, and so he knew I
Yeah.
could play centre and played um, Jason and Martin on the wings. It's not going to go too far wrong with that, are you?
Still all right, mate,
You
innit?
know, and me and Gary in the centres. Obviously, we had Jiffy at fullback, but we lost Jiffy for the series, which is unfortunate. I still argue that's maybe I can't think of a quicker, not better,
Yeah.
and I massive respect for people like Neil Fox, who I know and played with my dad, and who is a Hall of Fame rugby league, not Wakefield, rugby league,
Yeah.
and is maybe our greatest centre we've ever had in this country. Because his record says that. He won
Yeah.
Ashes, he won World Cups, he won trophies, and he scored over 300 tries and kicked more goals than anybody in his record point scorer in the game.
Speaks for itself, then, doesn't it? Really? Yeah.
That's like Brian Bevan scored 700. Martin, we talked about Martin and what a great player he was, what a great finisher. This guy scored over 200 tries more than him. And,
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it because it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
The numbers that will never be matched.
No,
You
they
know,
won't. Never, never again. Yeah.
so for me that makes him our greatest ever centre. Um, but that lineup, if anybody can name a quicker lineup, it had some proper pace.
Yeah.
You
And you're
know,
waiting. Yeah.
like Jason was probably the slowest player in the 5,
Just frightening, isn't it?
but he was the quickest laterally. I
Yeah.
mean, it was, and so yeah, that's my proudest moment, that game. So I got that in a frame, and like I said, the last test, I moved over to the other centre, so I marked Steve Renoff. So I swapped shirts with Steve Renoff, who's a great at the game. So it's quite. I thought that was the first one I got framed, and then I wanted to get a shirt that meant something to me from every club that I had. So obviously I haven't got a Wakefield one because you didn't get shirts then, and I only played 2 games. But I put 2 per frame. So I got my shirt from Hull because I was the first captain of Hull in Super League.
That's class, that, isn't it?
And we won the game, which was nice. So, so my first Super League game for Hull as captain of Hull in Super League, because they weren't in the, which baffles me. They weren't in the first 2 years of Super League. I got that framed in with my Warrington shirt when I scored my 250th try. So that took me past. I'd not kicked a goal at that stage, so that took me past 1,000 points, and I knew it was my 250th. So I asked if I could keep that shirt, which is lucky because we never won ourselves at Warrington. So there wasn't a massive big games, you know what I mean? And then the other frame, I've got the Saints when we won at Wembley. And I wasn't on the part long. It was my 5th game back after my reconstruction. But it's the Challenge Cup.
That's it, innit?
I was thankful to be playing rugby. I just had a knee reconstruction. You know, I got to watch a lot of that game. It's a great game. Hull and Wigan, 85. Saints and Bradford, 96. And then Lee and Hull KR. But only because it went to a draw and Golden Point. As a game, I don't think it competes with the other 2. The other 2 were just tennis games, so to speak, of great rugby. You know, it was serve, volley, lob, so to speak, of great try, great run. Robbie gets a hat trick and loses, and Steve Prescott looks like he's going to get a hat trick in 10 minutes. You know, just and I got to be on in that 10 minutes when the game changed, when we scored those 3 tries, because we probably changed it. Was Bobby kicked a lot for me. And I'm the one challenging and not quite getting there, and then it bounced backwards. And by the way, Kieran Cunningham's offside. I don't want to spoil this for Bradford fans, but worst referee, officials decision ever. And that's the first try when it bounces in the in-goal area, in between Nathan Graham and me, and goes over my head back to Kieran Cunningham. At the play of the ball, somebody, I don't even know, I can't remember who plays the ball, but who would have been dummy half?
No, Kieran, wouldn't it?
And what would he have done then?
He'd have been in front of the ball, chased from hooker, wouldn't
He'd have passed backwards to Bobby, who kicked it.
And run after it.
And he just went forward. Somehow it bounces and he scores. And we got away with it. And it suddenly, we go again and we go for it. And I think they touch it and it rolls and Vicky gets it. And then Simon Booth, the same. And suddenly,
momentum's changed, hasn't it? Which is key.
And then Danny Arnold scores. We go the length nearly. You know, Carl Hammond makes a great break, and Danny ends up with his second. And somewhere in between, Robbie gets his third. And I was on for that period. And back
last, don't it?
And I'm like, and people don't know, I went on at loose forward. So I was just glad to be playing. Like I said, after career-threatening injury, it was my 5th game back. So I was made up. So that's in the frame with my last ever pro game again, which was for Salford, which was the Championship Grand Final, getting them back.
Right.
So they all meant something.
I like that, mate. That's a good idea, that.
You know, and then the other 2, again, so there's 4 frames, but there's 2 shirts in every one, is me other international ones. So I've got Sean Hoppe from the Test series against New Zealand, and underneath that. Wendell Saylor, he was all right as well, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
it was there.
I
Yeah,
mean, Sean Hoppy was all right. He won grand finals with Canberra and played all right for New Zealand. So, um, and mine are just to me, but the Renoff and the Sailor and the Sean Hoppy, they're just players that you're privileged to play against,
yeah,
and hopefully give them as many problems as they gave me, because they did. They were wonderful players.
yeah. That's why you played the game, mate, to play in World Cup finals, Challenge Cups, Lancashire Cups, Yorkshire Cups, and it's really you'd have ripped their hand off when you were a kid for that, mate,
Oh,
wouldn't you?
yeah, 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 and you want to do it, but they're the games you want to play in. And do you know what? I miss playing as well. You know, I, again, probably in the form of my life in '97. Scott again, top of the try scoring list, playing centre, really in a good place. Just won an award for Player of the Month at the start of the season, so it was like an extended period because it was half of a month and then a full. And hat tricks in semi-finals. I'm ready for you know putting money on myself for Lance Todd and all sorts. As
Yeah,
in, I wouldn't, but that feeling you get when
that's
you
how you
play.
feel. Yeah,
Um, and never suffered with muscular injuries, just knees. And we played against Warrington, what would be 13 days before Wembley in '97. Second minute of game, an offload from Chris Morley. I've just timed it perfect into the space, through the line. 80 to go, but just a fullback to beat. But it's Nigel Vagana, who, again, is not a bad player.
yeah,
And I turned him inside out. And as a last desperate attempt to try and tackle me, he dives and I'm past him. And he catches, try to think which it would be, my right toe.
right.
And so in keeping me balanced, it lengthens my stride. Um, and however much you warm up, an elastic band will only stretch so far. And because he's pulled back on my toe of my right leg, my left leg is the next one to plant, has gone further and reached, and 2-inch tear in my hamstring. Still scored, still,
Yeah,
because it was 5 yards off the line. Before I get to the line, I've got the ball in my right hand, my left hand's gone bang, straight onto the back of my hamstring. Limp, put the ball down, carried off, heartbroken,
yeah,
crestfallen. But I missed out on the Lancashire Cup when we won it. When I first snapped my cruise ship, that was in that 6 weeks. It's rugby, it's sport, in it. It's
yeah,
makes you want to come back bigger and stronger, or take the next opportunity, or whatever it may be. Um, it can't be about the ones that got away. You've got to make
yeah,
the most of the ones that are in front of you, whether that's a World Cup final, which didn't go great for me, playing all right, but I make a mistake, Devs misses a tackle, and we lose a World Cup final. But you've got to come back from it, haven't you? What don't kill you makes you stronger.
yeah.
So
How many
it's
Englishmen can say they played in a World Cup final, mate?
no,
But like you said, I know it's sliding doors, Alan, but at least you were there for that to happen.
yeah, and again, I mean, I was gutted when I didn't get a an opportunity on tour. I was pleased with the way I was playing. I thought my form was good, but I also, I'm not a petulant kid. I understand the company that I'm keeping. You
Right.
know, there aren't any mugs out there. It's a
Yeah.
Lions tour, but I'm in the ham and eggers, which is what we call the midweek team.
Yeah.
You know, and you're supporting the test team. You want them. I mean, that night in Melbourne was phenomenal, and I'd gone from so low because I didn't get picked to well, we've just beaten Australia.
Yeah.
And I thankfully got to experience that a couple of times later on. But that was my first experience. And I was part of that squad. And as gutted as I was not to play, you got over it and was made up. Because I got it. I mean, we played against Newcastle the game before that test match. And we had stats and all sorts up in the hotel that Mal really was big, that, you know, every game from the last game went up on the board and the record went up on the board. And there was targets like tackle, not just attacking, but like defensive. And he had the player that had made the most tackles in his tenure in every position. What game it was, whether it was a tour game or a test match, he had those stats. And I broke the stat for, I've been playing on the right wing, for 13 tackles on the wing, which 13 tackles, it's not a lot of tackles, but for wingers, it was.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And no misses, which was important. And he had a big thing on, if you get going to make a tackle, you make two. And it was 5 doubles and a treble. So
Yeah.
I ticked loads of boxes defensively, done my shift, done everything that I was supposed to do. And I got a couple of tries as well. But it was a dominant performance by us as a team. We nilled Newcastle. So defensively, we were all good. But in the first test, Lockers had broke his arm. And I think, I'm trying to think what the team was. I think Lockers broke his arm and was in the centre with Paul Newlove on the wing. Knew he was a generational talent. What a player.
Yeah.
And I got it. He'd already played test matches, you know what I mean? He's a year younger than me, knew it. So he'd have been 20. I was 21. So we're still babies on tour. Gary was 20. In fact, me and Gary had our birthdays on tour, so we turned 21 and 22 on tour. And I mean, I don't think Mal's a great coach. He's not daft. He was giving some experience to some kids as well, to see where where they were going to be, are these potential future test players. So Newey already was, and he played on the wing, and Lockers broke his arm, and he went home. So Newey went into the centre, natural progression. He was a centre anyway.
Yeah.
But Mal was playing his best players, what I spoke about with myself in '94, who was in form. Newey, it was in your best 5 backs in the country. You know,
Yeah.
he's playing out of position, but he's in that.
Best player on the field, yeah.
He's in that calibre. So I get it.
Yeah.
And so that meant there was a wing spot open. And Graham Hallis scored a really good try against Illawarra. But probably that was his one moment on tour. Maybe he got a couple of tries for the tour. I was scoring regularly. Paul Eastwood wasn't really scoring, but he was a good player, Barney. And he'd done it, been there and done it before. And he played in that 1990 series. Was instrumental in that win at Wembley in 1990. Tough player, underrated player, because he wasn't overly quick. He was a bit Ryan Hawley, really good at both ends of the field, but big for the winger. Thick set, strong, and he kicked goals. And I look back and I think that's probably where he got ahead of, whether it would have been me or Graham or anybody. He kicked goals, and Lockers was the goal kicker, and they'd lost him. And Paul Eastwood went in and went on the wing. And he'd done it before, so Mal knew he could do it.
Yeah, like had it in the bank, Alan,
and that counts for a lot. But you don't know that when you haven't had that opportunity yet. And it just left me proper hungry. I'd been on the trip of a lifetime with some amazing players and people, played against the best players in the world. Or the best competition. I didn't play in the test matches, and they didn't play in the club games, their test players. But
but they still would have been up there, wouldn't they?
The competition over there at that point and always has been ahead of ours. So to challenge yourself there was fantastic. And I just came back hungry
Yeah.
and just got out of the blocks at the start of the next season and made that World Cup squad, which, yeah, I mean, as disappointing as it was, personally, because it was just one mistake. The rest of the performance was solid. And I wasn't the only person that dropped the ball because they kicked it too far and got a tap 20. And it was late on, just before Fedorf scored, obviously. So everybody's flagging. So as wingers, you've gone in to help. And I've taken the tap off the 20. And I've just run into Glenn Lazarus, Mark Sargent, and Steve Walters, who's Blockhead. He was the smallest, but his nickname was Blockhead. Lazarus was the brick with eyes. And, Sargent was ahead of Paul Harrigan in that Newcastle team at that time. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Just their front row smashed me. I've lost the ball 4 tackles later. Kevin Walters found Steve Renoff and Gary went off at half time. Devs was a wonderful player and just got caught with a wonderful ball, a step out, and
Yeah. That's the fine margin, Alan, though,
and
isn't it, at that level?
yeah, and
Yeah.
Steve Renoff was on his Test debut. He just won a Premiership, but so they knew about him over in Australia. But on the international scene, he was making his mark. And I can't even remember what the score was. It 10-6 or 8-4 or something. There's 4 points in it.
Yeah.
And I remember after the game, I won't say who, but one of the players was like, "Yeah, 2 mistakes, and it's cost us."
All right.
And he's right. But I remember that player made a mistake inside our 10, and then as a team, we got him out of that hole.
Because it must have been hard to hold on to that, though, Alan, and not like pipe up with
No,
it.
because that's the game. That's
No, I know,
our
but when it's
job.
through in your face, mate.
But that's your perfect through the game as a team. And when you make mistakes, you try and dig yourself out of it. And as a team, we do. And on that one occasion, when we aren't able to, not because we didn't want to, not it's not because it's not just me or Devs. It's could Devs have been wider because a back rower was flagging, and so Devs is a bit tight. Who knows?
And you're taking that carry because your pack are tired.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but it is what it is,
Yeah.
and I'll take it. I have some of that blame that you've got to carry, and I had to carry that heavy because you feel a responsibility. Because sliding doors,
Yeah.
if that doesn't happen, we might have won a World Cup. If buts and maybes, you've got to eventually put that to bed, though.
No, because they could have went on and scored 2 more tries without that happening or whatever. It
Yeah,
could have,
and it wasn't. It was a final, but the England game was when I was having my reconstruction, the next World Cup. So I've missed out on that again. You miss out. It's highs and lows. So the next time we were in a final is 2017. Callum Watkins, Josh Dugan.
honestly, I know what you're going to. I think that is a match-winning moment, mate.
Oh,
Isn't it? I think
you
we go
know,
on and win that then.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the moments
it is.
that change careers potentially. Lives. But and I know Devs. It was tough on Devs because he got a lot of stick as well.
Yeah.
But he's another what a player, what a gent, what a guy. I mean, did it in both sports at the highest levels. Awful to play against. So strong. He had the most vicious handoff. You know, he sat people down. And again, a wonderful player to have been in that squad says something about how his caliber. But you know, those moments are tough.
Yeah, just wasn't meant to be, was it,
But
mate?
yeah, no, and it still bites a little bit.
Yeah,
And you know, but then losing any game bites a little bit. That just
oh,
happens
yeah.
to be.
Even taking pass late when you were a kid in it on the backfield, it
Yeah,
did, didn't it? Though
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
how it is.
yeah. So, but you know, it's. But I think you got to try and take the positives. I mean, I was privileged to be in the World Cup final, in that caliber of surroundings. You know, and you kind of don't feel worthy. It was my second test. It was, and I hope I became a better player, partly because of that experience, the good and the bad. Um, but you know, and everybody was fit. Everybody, you know, all the big hitters were fit, and he picked a team on form. And if he'd have picked a more experienced team, they might have won, and they might have got beat by 30 because Australia were capable of that.
Exactly that. Yeah,
You,
yeah,
you know what? You'll never know because for my sliding door, Mal's got a sliding door moment. He has to make those big decisions. You
yeah.
know, he's got to put um, a big loss. A big loss was steady, and God, what a wonderful player his replacement was. We had a 19-man squad, and Bernard Dwyer, who I'd go to war with, fantastic player, was 18th man. We didn't have a 19th man because Graham Steadman came out of the squad because he was injured that week. He had to pull out. And I think Steady was playing fullback and Joe Lydon was 18th and 19th man, him and Bernard. But he had an obvious replacement. But on the bench was Alan Tate, another obvious replacement, Tate at fullback. And I don't think I'd played a game on the wing that season because I was playing fullback at Saints at the time.
Right.
So, you know, Mal was picking players that were in form. It's we'll never know. We'll never know. I mean, Gary was probably the best defensive back this country's seen for a long, long time. Phenomenal player. Did it at every club he went to, in every position he played, centre, left, right, or fullback. Did it in Australia.
He told me when he had a bad day with Steve out there, scored like 4 tries past him. He's
Yeah,
like, thanks for
yeah, I
that.
know. And yet I'm talking about him being the best defensive player, definitely in my generation. I
Yeah.
don't think there's
I
been
didn't
one
realise
since.
how good Gary was when I was younger, mate. It's only when I've got older I understand aspects of the game a bit more.
Phenomenal. You ask
Yeah.
players, you ask rugby players, and you know he was
He'll be up there.
a proper great of our game.
Yeah.
And losing him at half time
Mm.
was, I think, because you got to remember John Devereux could play centre, as could I, obviously, and went on to play international centre as well as club centre. But Devs was better known as a winger as well.
Yeah.
And on the bench, it was Devs and Alan Tate, who was a fullback. You might have been better putting Joe Lydon there and Tate at fullback. Who'll know? There's about 6 different combinations that you could have come up with to make it
And then,
different.
yeah.
But is the key moment Gary going off? We'll never know. You know, um, ultimately, it's not. Do you know what? I blame me more than Devs, and you know I hope he feels the same. But we that team was phenomenal. That Aussie team, and we were in there digging in the trenches. I mean, for me, that playing in a team that Kevin Ward was the best prop I ever played with, and I played with some good ones, Andy Platt and you know Lee Crooks, phenomenal players. And Andy Platt played as well. But Andy Platt and Kevin Ward, Betsy, Clarkey, and Ellery, Scoey, played in the centre. Funnily enough, there's another decision that Mal made, because I think based off the back of the tour as well, me and Derek played really well in that midweek team, but never played a test match. And we are the two players that forced our way into the test team that didn't play in the test matches 3 months later. And, he felt he couldn't not play Derek in the halves. So he played Derek and Sean and moved Scoey, this was a bit before Jason. So your winger options were, could he have played Devs or me with Martin? Could he have played Newlove? Because he didn't get selected. Could he have played Jonathan Davis? Who, remembering this is 92, before he had that great season at Warrington, I mean, he was always a great player. But could he have played him on the wing or in the centre or at fullback?
Go on forever, mate. Like you said, you're
Yeah,
just spitting like phenomenal out, aren't you?
yeah.
And
Some good players.
yeah,
So, but just not meant to be. But proud to have been part of that.
you should be as
Obviously.
well, mate. Yeah, no, of course you should be. So you mentioned Hull, and it doesn't matter why you've ended up there, mate. That is where you're at. So how was your time at Hull?
Tough, tough. Loved it. Again, I'm a big believer in it's all in. I'd made the decision to go, and it ended up being the three of us that went. Excuse me if you hear the kettle. The missus has come in now. She's
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, yeah, it's all
she's
right.
whispering. It's the loudest kettle in the world. I don't know why. So in fact, it's off charge. I'll I'll walk and talk. Go sit outside.
No
But
worries.
it's so nice.
Yeah,
So yeah, me, Simon, Booth, and Precky, and up want to go, and it worked for him. Could have loved him. But I went as a big signing, and it's tough. The newly promoted team. It started off well, won our first 2 games, but then I wasn't in my best. And I started well form wise, but my form tailed off, and it was tough. It was really tough because it was where the things get pointed. You spent all that money, and as I said, I didn't ask for the big transfer fee. They put me on the list at 350 grand. I wouldn't pay that to anybody. And they worked the books. They said, right, we're going to end up, we'll pay you 300 and either 50 or 60. Can we split it so that it looks like we spent this much on Boothie, this much on Becky, this much on Alan Hunte? So I think my official fee was 250. So that Saints agreed rather than the 350 that they put me on for. Because
I'm a big fee, mate, in it.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
but Precky they'd put on at the beginning of the season before, God knows why. And he was on for the free. They were prepared to let him go for nothing. Again, that's the politics that some of it you understand, some of it not so much. And we went, and I was all in. We moved there. All three of us moved there. I think Boothie still lives there. And I think Steve only moved back to St Helens once. He was poorly. He was, had 2 years, went to Wakefield for the season, went back to Hull, and then was retiring early and was living in Hull all that time. Big believer in, you, you make the most of it, and they obviously felt the same. So we all moved. It's a great city to play rugby in. As a kid, I used to call it Dull Hull because you used to go down what is now Clive Sullivan Way, and it was the brown, murky Hull estuary, Humber estuary, and quite industrial to your left. That's the right
Yeah.
was the estuary, and then you'd go onto some rough estate like where I came from. So I'm not being detrimental, but it was just a rough Hull estate where an East Hull team played or a West Hull team played or whoever it might be, and generally got your backside kicked because it was always strong over in Hull. So you have this vision of dull Hull, and it was obviously
Yeah.
with the rugby in a period where muddy pitches. It's a great city, and it's got some areas that aren't as nice as other areas, as everywhere does. Everywhere has
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But it's got some really beautiful places and some nice little villages outside of it. I was happy with all that. I just wasn't playing great. I wasn't playing the best rugby. But there was other stuff going on which I found out about later. Um, Halfway through the season, there was rumours, Bradford wanted me. And I'm like, in the press, no, I've made a commitment. I want to be at Hull, and I did.
Yeah.
Um, and then I found out later on that my agent and the chief exec at the time of the club were colluding to try and get me out. And this wasn't to do with form. This was because David Lloyd was the owner, and he had this vision of Hull FC and Hull football playing in the same stadium in a brand new stadium, and making him quite a rich man, which he already was.
Yeah.
Great dream, and it's actually happened, but in a different way. He bought both teams. Remembering Hull were like third from bottom of the fourth division, when fourth tier of football, and rubbish, basically. And Hull were not in Super League, so probably a bit cheaper to buy at the time. So he had both the grounds, and he was going to knock down Boothby Park,
Yeah.
where the football team played, build houses, blah, 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 whilst the football team played at the Boulevard. Once the houses were built, they were going to build a stadium. And then once the stadium was built, knock the Boulevard down and build houses there. Meanwhile, he's, owns two clubs, and he was pumping some money. He spent a lot of money on me. They had Mark Haitley as the manager for the football. And then some idiot that worked for him didn't check the paperwork, and they couldn't do anything with the football ground because there was a supermarket, small, not one of the big ones.
Yeah.
I want to say Quickie Mart type, like that had one of those medium-sized stores
Yeah.
at one end of the stadium on the land, and you couldn't knock it down. And so he wanted to pull out. He'd lost, I don't know, 1-2 million on Mark Haitley's contracts and mine and transfer fees and this and that, and not to mention buying the clubs. But you can sell the clubs. He couldn't do anything with the football grounds. He was done. So he wanted to pull out. Meanwhile, until he could pull out, he wanted to offload some of the cash, so they were, it wasn't costing him on a monthly basis as well. Hence, the chief exec and my agent are trying to manoeuvre stuff. Anyway,
Right.
it got it died down, and then at the back end of the season, start to find a bit of form again, get over for a couple of tries. But the rumours started, and Bradford again, and Sheffield. I remember John Kay phoning me, and I said, "I'm sorry." There weren't many mobiles back then. We're in the middle of a team meeting, and I'd not signed out, but it was just tough, and it was like, right, because I'd found out what was happening,
Okay.
and the coach knew that I knew.
Yeah.
So when my phone went in the middle of a meeting, I answered it, which is wrong,
Yeah.
but I didn't care. I was like, you've tricked me horrendously. Do you know what I mean? You try to do
Yeah.
all sorts behind my back. And I probably my phone picked up because I was angry and I played angry.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and we got to the end of the season, and then I sat down, fired my agent off. Wasn't happy with that, so I got rid.
Yeah.
And sat down with the chief exec, and we came to an agreement where, if I left, what happened, and basically it was because the club was dying, the club was going under. Lloyd was going, and the following season, obviously they got rid of the big earner and they cut as much wage wise as they possibly could. And Hull really struggled. I think they went into the last game of the season, and if they lost that, they'd have finished bottom. And they
Right.
did. So Huddersfield did, because Huddersfield is who they were playing. I think, I'm not sure. So Huddersfield losing meant Hull went 1 point ahead. I don't know, but it meant that they weren't
Yeah.
bottom. But they were still a bit like where Salford are at this moment in time. And Gateshead had played, because remember, I'd been gone a year. So this was my first year at Warrington. And Hull
Yeah.
had got worse. Because it wasn't my best season, but I was really proud of the season we had as a club. Newly promoted, we finished above Huddersfield, Salford, and Warrington. For a newly promoted team, the first newly promoted team, really, really. Oh no, sorry, the second, because Salford got promoted the year before.
Yeah.
That's a good year,
Yeah.
and
It's a good effort. Yeah.
they've never been out since. And we've seen what's happened to some teams, like Salford, like
Yeah.
obviously Wakefield. Had a big period where they were in, but they weren't originals, and they've been down since. Lee,
Yeah.
especially. So I
Yeah.
was quite proud of collective what we did. Just mine wasn't the best season. We sat down and we worked out how best for me to go to help the club save money. And it still might not be enough. And like I said, so the 99 season, they limped through that. Gateshead had been introduced to the league, but it wasn't working up there, and they merged. And if they hadn't merged, there might not be a whole team.
It's good. He thought that, isn't it?
You know,
Yeah.
I'll go back to chatting at the beginning. The game's always been where it's at.
Yeah.
Game's always it's tough, because even when we attract money, it tends to be people that were brought up in those areas still.
Yeah.
We're not attracting the Arab money that Man City have,
No.
or Newcastle.
Or any new money. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's grafters that have done really well for themselves.
Yeah.
Derek Beaumont, who would probably say he's not going to win an etiquette competition because he is what he is.
Right. Yeah.
He's a local lad, done good in
Yeah.
business, and kudos for him for doing what he's done at Lee. But it's not football money. David Lloyd
No.
tried, and 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 ultimately, and everybody wants to have a go at the governing body or at the owners. Saints fans having a go at the owners because they're a bit invisible at the moment, because as a club they're going through a tough time for
Yeah.
Saints, not a Salford tough time, or but a tough time for
No.
Saints,
Yeah. Yeah. For them.
as all clubs are. And I'm sure the owners are like are all saying it's been tough times because of what happened through COVID and what have you. And everybody's got an opinion, and this coach should be out, and this owner wants to book his ideas up. But it's the same fans that'll complain if the season ticket goes up
Yeah.
15 quid. Rightly so, because the people that are buying season tickets haven't got much money,
Yeah.
but don't have a so complain about it going up 15 quid. Don't complain about people that put in thousands and thousands and thousands of their own money
Yeah. No, it's
in
a good point, that, mate, isn't it?
in trying to keep our sport going.
Yeah.
Because our attendances are as good as they've been for a long, long time. But we're living in a world where TV runs it, and our TV deals aren't great, and people say that's the governing body, but we are what we are.
Yeah, we can only
You
take
know,
what's on offer, Alan, can't we?
darts is not a sport for me.
Yeah,
It's if you can do it in a pub, it's not a sport.
right.
Does it take great skill? Yes. Are they as skillful in what they do as a halfback in carving open, you know, as a very stingy Wigan defence? Yes. Because I can't do what they do.
Yeah,
Like they can't do what we do. But I struggle to call it a sport.
right.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's on
It's
Sky Sports.
no, it's imagine. Yeah, like how can someone like Eddie Hearn and his dad Barry
Because they
put
promote
darts on that pedestal and not ours,
it,
isn't it?
it's accessible
Yeah,
everywhere. And do you know why? Because there's pubs everywhere. There's social
true.
clubs. And
Yeah,
in a lot of them, they've got a dartboard. Rugby's played
yeah,
where rugby's played. And that's what go back to working class areas, rugby union boys, very grammar school, very private school,
yeah,
that has more money. And as a sport, they're struggling. Their governing body's
yeah,
a lot richer because they own Twickenham. We don't
yeah,
own our big home. If we owned Old Trafford or somewhere like that and had our
yeah.
finals and our test matches there, we might be in a better place. But we don't.
Yeah, yeah, well, we
Um,
are. Yeah,
but is that their fault that 50, 60 years ago they didn't say let's do this? I mean, I I don't know. I don't know. There was talk about when they bought Odsons, should they do something with that? But it cost billions to redo Wembley, and the FA is still
yeah,
paying for it and hiring it out for everybody to the point where only amateurs haven't played at Wembley now. In football, everybody plays at Wembley. Every final
oh,
is held there and semi-final, and because they have to get the money back,
yeah,
and which I think devalues our game there as well.
yeah. It
Because
does dilute it a bit.
it used to be the odd test match, FA Cup final, football internationals, and
Yeah,
uh, the FA Cup. It was a privilege to play at Wembley, and it still is in rugby. But because of how accessible everything else is, Wembley just seems like, yeah, oh, everybody's at Wembley every week. There's a game on at Wembley every week. Whereas it used to get used 5 times a year because it was built for
yeah,
the Olympics or redesigned for the Olympics in 1948. So, so yeah, our sport is where it is. Because I don't want
yeah.
to go Odsal
No, yeah,
for a grand final. I
no,
don't mind Odsal. It's not my favourite ground, but it's heritage wise, it's a great ground, as all of them
yeah.
are. But yeah,
You need a showpiece stadium for a
yeah,
showpiece event, don't you?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is.
Oh,
It is
that's
what
it.
it is. So
So like Warrington and Salford come along, Gal, and where are you at with the game at these points? Are you looking to the future?
I love the game.
Yeah,
Um, Still want to play. I'd had my knee reconstruction. My knee was great, obviously, when I was at Saints at the start of Super League. Um, as in, I came back for the start of Super League, feel fit, hungry because it's not gone great at Hull. Get the move to Warrington. Um, Back with Darrell van der Velde 10 years after I've been sat in that office after my debut. And I'll be honest, he scared me a little bit. As an 18-year-old kid, he had the biggest hands in the world. And he was a scary character, but a great man, really. I learnt a lot off him off the field.
right.
Uh, you know, um, not necessarily rugby related. And went as a pretty big signing there. And then we got the second year, we got Alfie Langer and G to off the back of a great season from Toa as well. And myself, Brazy was a year older and getting better. And it's probably when all the this could be Warrington's year started, and it wasn't to be. And we flattered to deceive and played some great rugby and lost some terrible games. Loved my time there, and as I said, I mean, another they all are great rugby town, but until you're embroiled in that,
Yeah.
you don't know what a great place it is to play rugby. And as I said, Hull as a city and that rivalry was wonderful. So Warrington, you're getting to learn something that I lived down the road, but I went back to St Helens, and St Helens fans walk past your house. When you're
Yeah.
in Warrington, it's Warrington fans, and you get a taste of what they're about and how passionate they are. And obviously, some decent signings. The crowds were going up, and like I said, we played some attractive rugby on our day. Really good rugby, some big wins. I remember they made a big thing about Warrington not beating Saints since 19 or 2001, and that being their only ever victory. Well, I played in that game, and I remember it being competitive. I also being blown away by them as well. But we hadn't built up 10 years of never beating St Helens at that stage as a club Warrington. So yeah, some really good wins against the Wigan or Bradford, who won competitions at that time as well, and St Helens, and losing to Wakefield and Huddersfield, and and Salford, and being really disappointed. Couple of semi-finals, not quite getting there. We got beat by Bradford in 2001. So we started to compete, but we never got to the big game.
Yeah.
But and off the field, you Neil and you Sheila in the office and all those kind of people that every club has wonderful people, but until you've been at that club, you don't know them.
Yeah.
And yeah, just look, like I said, and played with some. I mean, Danny Nutley left Warrington and went and played State of Origin.
Yeah.
What a great player he was. Just played some great lads, and we had fun. Maybe too much. And by this time, I was a senior player. I was in the senior player group.
Yeah.
And our senior player group had Gary Chambers, who obviously has been a big part of the club for a long time off the field since his retirement. And
Yeah.
he went on that bar tour with me and Gaz. Great bloke, Gaz. Me and Gaz were the Brits, but we had Tuera, Andrew G, Danny Farrer, and Alan Langer. And Danny was sensible, but the rest, play hard, party hard. Oh, maybe that was. I don't think he was, because with Daniel, he was a big believer in not the party hard, so to speak, but in keeping team together, and doing things together. And once a month we went out as a club, players with
Yeah.
wives and some of the admin staff, etc. And as players, we used to get, there was a restaurant that we used to get the player of the game, we used to get like a voucher. So we, rather than use it individually, we'd go there and put them all together and knock it off the bill because we'd take them to the restaurant. But because they
Yeah.
were our sponsors, they'd close down to the public, and and doing stuff like that. And every month a different person had to organise it.
Yeah.
So we went to a couple of, yeah. So we had to go. We ended up going to this place 2 or 3 times, but we went to other places like somewhere in Warrington, but then it might be somewhere in Wigan because there was a Wigan lad. And you had to go to Monday Club. You didn't have to drink. But
Yeah.
obviously we're full time, and so you go in, you do your pool recovery and rehab and video and get hammered. You needed a drink after one of Daryl's videos, to be fair. Especially if you, I mean, and that's when you got away with it.
Yeah.
If you got hammered in the video, you needed more than just a drink. And we had to, we had this pub just around the corner because we were based in a school, and I think the Blackburn Arms it was called, and we had to go in there, and you didn't have to drink. And obviously, the Wigan bus, one lad couldn't because he was driving.
Yeah.
And and Daryl went as a coach. The coaching staff had to go as well, and he said, "Right, we all go, and everybody goes, and the minimum stays an hour. We're finished at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You're lucky to be doing what you're doing. We're going to spend some time away from rugby." Alan Langer in that environment was like, "Right, here we go, card school, pint." And sometimes most people had gone an hour and a half after that. Sometimes they were in there 6 or 7 hours later or in town.
Yeah.
But whatever happened, you had to be on it the next day. And if Daryl thought or knew it was a big one the day before, you knew you were going to get it run out of you. It
Yeah.
was do that, you got to pay the penalty, you got to pay something back. And it was on a Monday. You're playing on a Sunday, not a massive effect, you know.
Yeah.
The reason why we lost some games wasn't that. The reason why it was because we did not turn up to some games. You lose to
Yeah.
Wigan, you lose to Saints, you can live with that. But and even losing to a Wakefield or Huddersfield, but the amount of games that we consistently lost to teams nowhere near our quality
Yeah.
shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have happened. But it was to play with those players. Yeah, I mean, Alfie is a rugby league great of the world.
Yeah.
God knows how many comps and a nemesis. I mean, he played in that World Cup final. Um,
Yeah.
and he kind of knows some of the stuff that I talked about, that I experienced in that final. He experienced in 1990. He got the Shepherd's Hook and didn't play in
Yeah.
test two and test three. And in 94, he played in the first game at Wembley again and got the Shepherd's Hook. I mean, it's not bad
Right.
when you get the Shepherd's Hook and you're bringing on Mickey Stewart. It's not bad.
Yeah. It's different. Yeah.
But and didn't play in test two and test three. But 90, 92, 94. In between that, Alan Langer's playing great rugby, so he kept getting that first opportunity. So he played in
Yeah.
that, and obviously he played in the '88 World Cup final against New Zealand. He'd been very young then. So he's got 2 World Cup winners medals. He's got God knows how many premierships. He's got experience of playing over here. He loves coming back because
Yeah.
he's loved by Warrington fans and the players. Because I love all those guys. We love we love each other lads. I love the whole lads and the Saints lads because we're all of an age where we can't walk. We creak and we creak and groan when we get out of bed.
Yeah.
You put your body on the line, um,
Yeah.
and I think you deserve a pint after that. To be fair,
To say the least, mate. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah. Um, but that last year, my body started to give in the second
Okay.
half of the season. And I'd played rugby union in the winter. My body was really good. And I felt my knee in a game. And I didn't play lots of games. And um, there was a bit of press about it, or it didn't fit into the game, and it is tough. I'll make no bones about it. But I couldn't play in the European Cup games. And they took me down. And I think there was 3 games and I played in all 3. And then there was a 3-week spell that I couldn't play. So it was great for learning. So we're still down there playing because I was at Pontypridd.
Yeah.
And then over the Christmas period, we had a couple of average teams that we blew away. So you're not really going to read too much into that. A cup game. And then one of them, I felt my knee. So I ended up going back and having my first arthroscope since the reconstruction.
Right.
I've lost count. I've just had one on my good knee that's now. I think I've had about 10 in knee operations. 2 on my right knee, and the rest on my left.
Right.
Um, so I've gone in, and at this stage, I think I've had 4 arthroscopes and then a full reconstruction. So this is keyhole number 5. But I've had no
Right.
problems for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. 95 I had the reconstruction. This is 2001.
Yeah.
So I've gone back, had it done, missed a couple of games at the start of the Warrington season. No problems, just another bit of cartilage. The ACL repair's fine. The graft,
Yeah.
sorry, tendon graft is fine. Cleaned up the cartilage, not that there's much left. 2 weeks later, you're back. You know, I mean, um, normally it's 2 to 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
I played 8 days after an arthroscope once. So, you
Yeah.
know, probably why my knees a bag of spanners now, but I want to play. You want to play. So
Yeah.
um, I've gone back. I'm flying again. Felt quick, scoring tries, playing fullback. Because weird at Warrington, I had a year. The first year I played nearly all the games in the centre.
Yeah.
Lee Penny was out for a bit, and I think I played 3 or 4 games at fullback first season. All the rest at centre. And the second year, I played nearly all of them at wing, and then the third year I played nearly all of them at fullback. And
Right.
I probably enjoyed fullback the most,
Yeah.
and was playing okay. And then 2/3 of the way into the season, I mean, he just started to feel really unstable, um, and it got to the stage where, um, and Darryl left with about 6 games to go. And and we were playing 30-game seasons, so they're long
Yeah.
seasons. But we've got no Lancashire Cup legal trophy, so they're still shorter than the old winter. Um, but so we've probably 20 games into the season, and this happens, and I've got about 6 games before Darryl leaves. He's managing me, you know. I might not train on a Monday, and I have to manage me, so you know I'm not having a beer when other
Yeah.
people are and what have you, because you got to play the game, you know. And then it might be the next week I had to miss Monday, Tuesday, just to let because it was flaring up and let it settle down, and then you play. And I think the week before he left, I pretty much came to the captain's run, hardly did any of that and played. And then my knee settled down, and then we had a couple of games where Paul Derbyshire, God rest his soul, might have been in charge, or before they got Steve Anderson, who knows where
Yeah.
he is now. Um, and Alfie went home early as well, and Gigi, so we'd lost those 2 players. So we've only got really of the big names, Tuera and myself with the bigger contracts.
Yeah.
And I'm on one leg, and they changed the medical staff as well. So new medical staff came in and just saw me as a crock, which I was.
Yeah.
And uh, the he still managed me and rested me a couple of games. So I missed a couple of games, but it was still a 30-game season. I played 30 games.
Yeah. It's a good
Um,
effort, mate, isn't it?
you know,
Yeah.
but the last 10 progressively got worse and worse. And with about 3 weeks to go, he took me into the office and went, Alan, look, I don't want to embarrass you um, with an offer in respects to what you're on now, what we prepared to pay you.
Yeah.
We, we're not going to recontract you. And I'm 31. Um, Barring the reconstruction, I've played solid since I was 18.
Yeah.
My knee felt different to how it had felt beforehand. And, you know, I'll still love playing, but it was hard. It was hard
Yeah.
to get to a place where you could play.
Yeah.
And I resigned myself to, do you know what? This might be it. And obviously, we've been in a full-time environment, but I've come from an era where we'd worked, and I've had my thick moments, but education-wise, I've not done too bad. I wasn't a qualified teacher then, but I went on to teach. So there's a little bit in that top 2 inch,
Yeah.
but not as much as there probably would have been without alcohol. But there's a little bit. Um, yeah, life doesn't owe you anything.
No.
So why rugby should, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can't agree with, and I've heard lots of players say it, and it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, rugby doesn't owe you anything. Because if it's not you, it's the next cab on the rank. That's what the sport is. And you can be the shiniest car in the showroom. But once you drive out, you're tainted. And they're looking for the next bright, shiny car. We all
Yeah.
want the next Alex Murphy, Ellery Hanley, Sam Tompkins. I purposely picked people from different generations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those players stand alone in their generations.
Yeah.
Some great players around them. Some that shared the greatness. Too many people spoke to me about Alex Murphy is the greatest player they've ever seen for me to have an argument with them about it. And yet
Yeah.
I've spoke about Neil Fox. He's up there with him, you know,
Yeah.
for what they did for our country as rugby players, but also as soldiers. I mean, Murph talks about when he was conscripted, and he says he didn't go to war. But again, how would our players feel about that? And having to sacrifice a year or two of, because they have to conscription.
Yeah. No, it's not that actually, isn't it?
Now, whether conscription's the right or wrong thing to be doing is a different argument. The fact is, that's how it was, and they went and did it and served our country.
Yeah.
Um, Probably because the generation before them some of them lost their lives for our country. They'd have
Yeah.
probably been just glad that they've got to do it, but they're not at war, you know.
Yeah.
So then Ellery, I mean, he's the person that people argue, was it Murph or was it Ellery? Do you know what I mean? Because they're
Yeah.
different players, different types of players, but again, great. And then obviously of more recent times, Sam's up there um,
Yeah.
as English players.
Yeah.
They've been forces in our game as purely as players. Obviously, Murph and Ellery had an impact past that.
Yeah.
So, so life don't owe you anything. And,
No.
and so rugby certainly doesn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, and just if that's frozen, I hope it's coming through okay. It looks like I froze, but I hope you can hear me.
No.
Uh,
No. Mate. Yeah. You have been pros for a while, but we've been conversing like
yeah.
this, but
Uh,
it's
so so yeah, I
you're right
was
though, aren't you?
well. So I was
They
happy.
sort of transcend the sport, Alan, to a degree, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I was comfortable. I felt my body was giving up on me,
Yeah.
and so I'm divorced. So, but my ex-wife obviously went home and we had the conversation. And I was like, this could be it. And I tried to make plans. I bought some property. I already had a house that when I moved house, I kept the one that we previously lived in. So I was already a landlord, but then I went out and bought some houses, and I was preparing to subsidise our income. I had a family, um, 3 girls, and was prepared to go out and work again. Would love to coach, but and had always got past my coaching badges very early. I've only been turned pro a year, so it was something I wanted to do. but I'd resigned myself to this might be it. I didn't actively go out and search for the club. And then I got a knock on the door. An old teammate of mine from Saints in that A-team dressing room, Mark Lee, who couldn't get a regular game in Saints' first team, so left and went to Salford and got a testimonial, become a really good player at Salford, a stalwart there, and then he'd recently retired and gone to the coaching staff at Salford, but still lived in St Helens, and so they must have been having conversations, and Steve McCormick was the young coach. I mean, he was younger than I was. And knew that I wasn't re-signing, so they were interested. And I knew my body probably, but I knew my body wasn't as good as I wanted to be. But it beats digging holes, was my philosophy. And I've not really mentioned any figures about any of the contracts, barring the 3-3-4-4, where our incentive payments are. But I went from rubbish yearly guaranteed money, and you want to play for your winning pay, and you want to play big games because it was more winning pay, to Super League, and lots of things that changed there, and the move to Hull, and I've seen both ends of the scale where I got paid really, really well, and I was grateful for that. Because I wanted to play rugby. And I went to Salford for probably a quarter of what I was earning at Warrington.
Right.
I think Warrington found out I'd signed for that and were disappointed, because when he said I didn't want to embarrass you, they didn't realise. I reckon I'd probably got 10, 15, even 20 grand more at Warrington. And they thought that offer, because it was still slightly better than the average wage, and it was rugby.
Yeah.
It was. And then we got relegated, so those contracts, it was a 2-year deal. That contract got ripped up, and we were waiting and waiting. And I signed for even less. My last year of playing rugby, I don't mind saying this, we were full time, but we were in the lower division.
Yeah.
But they've made the decision to go full time. I played for 15 grand a year,
Right.
because it was better than not playing.
Yeah. You just
And
still had that love for the game, mate.
I was part of a team that got relegated. We didn't get relegated
Yeah.
because of me. We got relegated because of us. We
Yeah.
all played our part in that. And some people they got rid of, and some they kept. And when I initially had talks with Salford, I mentioned I wanted to coach, and nothing happened
Yeah.
in the first year. But that second year, they I was assistant coach with the academy with Mark Lee.
Right.
I loved that year playing, and I got both my knees washed out, and I felt lots better,
Right.
because I probably played like I felt like I was ready to retire. My body was, and I tried, but I was struggling in Super
Yeah.
League. And maybe it's my standards as well, because I want to be as good as I can be.
Yeah.
Because
Nothing wrong with that, mate, by the way.
I mean, in my 15 years, I probably finished as the club's top try scorer in 10 of those years, wherever I was. At Saints, I think maybe 1 or 2 years. The first year of Super League, and then another year when I probably had some injuries. So Paul
Right.
Newlove 1 year and Anthony Sullivan. So they could score a try.
I was going to say, not bad company. Yeah.
Still finished in a Hull's joint top try scorer. Toa outscored me at Warrington because he was the competition's top try scorer
Yeah.
in the first year, and then in year 2 and year 3, I was the top try scorer. And then in the year that we got relegated, I didn't score a try in the first half of the season. I got dropped, and rightly so. I was playing awful for 3 games. And in that 3 games, Steve McCormick got sacked. And then Simsy took over for a short period until Carl Harrison came. And Simsy put me back in the team. And it was like a little bit of the kick up the arse that I needed as well
Yeah,
as a bit of a rest to the body. And I came back and I still finished as the club's top try scorer. Wasn't enough in that collective
yeah,
because, and it's not just about scoring tries, but ultimately that's why most teams had me. I was in there to create opportunity and finish
yeah.
them.
You're a
And
prolific, mate.
and and um, and then in my last year, I wasn't the top because I'd done it the year before. I was second to Cliff Beverley, who was rugby league's top try scorer, and I still scored 30. But
Yeah,
that's because I had one of the most enjoyable years of my life playing rugby,
yeah,
and probably because the pace of the game wasn't Super League. I
yeah,
found it comfortable. So because I found it comfortable, my body was all right. Carl Harrison was wonderful as my head coach, but I was also part of the coaching team. And we'd have coaching meetings and I'd be involved, and then he'd be coaching me. But I remember a period of the season where he said, "I'm thinking of resting you. We've got some big games coming up," and I said, "Don't rest me, because if I have a rest, I might seize up."
yeah,
He rested me one at Easter. I played one. I didn't play Good Friday, so I played on the Easter Monday.
yeah.
Um, he rested me when we had a midweek game because we had that Aviva Trains competition and we had a couple of midweek
Oh yeah,
games. So he strategically rested me, but I was pretty much playing once a week. Training
yeah,
was comfortable, and I felt in better nick than the last period at Warrington and that whole season at first year at Salford. And we got to that period where he said, "I'm thinking of resting you." He went, I said, "Don't rest me because I'm scared I'll seize up." So he put me on the bench. So I was still getting a bit of a run out, 25, 30 minutes. But he said, you might have to play, or we'll probably have to play back row. I was like, yeah, comfortable with that. And I mean, I'm doing more work in those 25 minutes than I would be in the centre. But I'm only
yeah,
doing it for 25 minutes. I can live with that. Comfortable, and gave me a little bit of a rest. And then, because we had some big games at the back end of the season, like that Aviva Trains final, then the two league games against Lee, who are our biggest rivals, then the
yeah.
playoff game against Lee, and then the grand final against Lee. I think we played them, and they were in our group stage for the Aviva Trains as well. So we had two league games, two
Yeah.
Aviva, an Aviva final, a playoff, and a final. So we played them 7 times, and we drew the first one away at their place, won all the rest. And they were the only really competitive games, truly
Yeah.
competitive that year. Um, and the rest was fun. It was we were scoring loads of tries, and it was basketball, Harlem Globetrotter rugby sometimes. I think it kind of felt sorry for some teams. We played Dewsbury one game, and um, I got 5, and it was the only game I played left centre all most of the season. I started on the wing a few games, but then played left centre because Stuart Littler wanted to play right centre, and I preferred right centre, but I didn't mind.
Yeah.
And that game he didn't play. It was the only game he missed all season. So I played right centre, and I'm going over on the right hand side, and got 5. And I just went to line on. See, jokingly, you
Yeah.
see, play me there. Um, and it was because Stu had a great season as well. But it was fun, and some
Yeah.
great lads. Simon Baldwin, Sid, was my back rower and centre, and I had Danny Arnold on the wing with me. He was playing left wing, and he played right wing at Saints when I was right centre.
Yeah.
So
Like full circle.
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
fun. And the big games not, but this is how relaxed it was. Is that um, the academy were curtain raisers in quite a few of the home games. So
Right.
I'm at the ground really early before any of the first team. And I'm there an hour and a half before the academy game finishes. You've got an hour and a half of the game, and then a 40-minute gap at least in between. and I'm running the yellow t-shirt, so I'm running on and off the pitch with messages to the team. And then the last 20 minutes, somebody else would take over the yellow t-shirt because I had to go in for the team talk. Because Rhino would do the team talk an hour before kickoff. But you play good rugby when you're happy, and I was happy. It's a wonderful
I
club.
say that. Yeah,
It
you're in a
breaks
good
me,
space, aren't you?
yeah, it breaks my heart to see where they are now, um,
Yeah,
because you give a little bit of your heart to all those clubs. Wakefield got the smallest part of it as a player, but the
yeah,
biggest part as a supporter because it's still there for me as Wakefield.
yeah.
But
Good.
then obviously St Helens and Hull and Warrington, and each experience is different, and you love
Yeah,
them for different experiences and reasons, but love them all the same. They're, they're,
yeah,
they're not,
and that's
they're
what the
not,
sport's good at.
yeah, you know. And like now, I call the games for Hull because I'm retired, not just
Yeah,
from working from teaching. I retired because fortunately I get to spend more time at home. And Mrs. got a business. We're comfortably where I don't have to.
yeah,
And I got to 50, and it was like, right, can you be retired slash stay at home dad? It's wonderful. The youngest step, because the eldest two are similar ages to my three, and there's a
right.
big gap. And the youngest is she'll be 11 next month. So doing the school run, and I get to see her play, and some of the stuff that you don't miss out. It's just in different times of your life. You know what I mean?
You've had to
So,
sacrifice that hour a little bit, haven't you?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, you know, but yeah, it, now that I have got that more time at home, I call games for Hull, and I started off with BBC Radio Manchester.
yeah,
As soon as I left Salford, they asked me, and I was,
right.
you don't get anything. I just love going. You
Yeah,
talk about rugby, as you can tell. It's easy. Let's do that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
covering a lot of Salford and Wigan games. Um, And then I got a gig, actually get a little bit of pocket money. And it's not done for the money. It covers the cost, because the cost would be more. Uh, but I do Radio Humberside, but it's a day, because it's a trek. But I get to go watch Hull, which
and talk about
has
it.
a, a special place in my heart, like the other clubs do as well.
Yeah,
And B, talk about from a Hull perspective what they have to do better or what they did wrong, because
yeah,
it's Hull fans that are listening to Radio Humberside, but still give an
yeah,
impartial view on that was good, that wasn't good. He needs, in my opinion, to do this. And it's my day out now. You don't have as many days on the beer like we used to when we played. That's my day out. But instead of beer, I call in at Starbucks and I have a coffee and I get a bit of chill time. And when they answer the phone, I get speakerphone in the car. And it's the weekend, so I try my girls.
yeah,
Every blue moon the answer, because they've got their busy lives. And it's
yeah,
like history repeating itself when I didn't phone my mum. Um, and so, yeah, and it's the only time I haven't got two Great Danes or a daughter or a pickup
yeah,
or netball training to go to or cooking or whatever it may be. I'm just in the car, relatively empty motorway in front of me once you get past Wakefield as well. And I can have half an hour talking to. I'm not sure I've had the journey where I've got all three of them, but I could have half an hour with all three of them, and it still have a little bit of time before I get to Hull. And then I stop at and have a Starbucks and a bit of a slice of cake, and then go to the game. Call the game. Watch some rugby. Last year it was painful. This year it's been wonderful.
yeah,
Um, but in that rugby, that's sport as well. The highs and lows.
exactly.
Um, but oh god, it was hard. It was hard work last year. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, but it's great that they're not there. But there's the cycle, because they're not there. Somebody else is having a hard time, and it's one of my other clubs for different
yeah,
reasons. Well, it's not just one. I mean, Saints are in a bad place at the moment.
Yeah, it's like you said, they're in that place that's bad to Saints, though, isn't it? Not to
Yeah,
their existence.
and
Yeah,
their fans don't know how lucky they are
yeah,
in that respect.
yeah. It's just a
But they,
transition, mate, isn't
but
it, for
yeah,
them?
but they've earned that right because of from St Helens. They've followed that team and they've got to see some really good times, whereas Wakefield haven't, like on the scale that Saints had. You have to go back to the '60s to experience that. Um, you know, Salford, the '70s. And to be fair, Salford have had a 5 year period where they've been pretty good. You
Yeah,
know,
they've punched well above the weight, haven't they?
yeah, but are we seeing the downside of that? Are they paying? Are they paying the penalty for? I don't know because I'm not
Yeah,
at that club.
possibly, mate.
You
Yeah,
know,
possibly.
so but whatever the reason, it genuinely breaks my heart as a rugby fan
Yeah,
to see Salford going through what they're going through.
yeah. There's
To
good
see,
people at that club as well, Alan, isn't there?
yeah, because I know
Yeah,
people at the club, but so it's more tangible to me.
yeah,
But it breaks my heart to see Bradford where they are, to see
yeah. Well, yeah, massive, weren't they?
to see Widnes where they are.
Yeah,
You know, I came into my professional journey and Widnes were the Cup Kings and were about to win back-to-back league titles with a team full of stellar. I mean, that Alan Tate, Courier had just nearly won a grand final in Australia. Or
yeah,
was just about to actually nearly
yeah.
win the grand
Try
final.
being witness and United, mate.
Well, I can't forgive you for United as a Yorkshire lad. Um, but and now obviously St Helens over here a lot of, and I don't live in St Helens now. I live in the Wirral. So even more Scousers and Liverpool fans, and again, I'm like, no offence, but you should support Tranmere. If you live on the Wirral, you should support Tranmere. I'm a big believer
Yeah,
in support where you're from.
local.
Do you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? And if you move
yeah,
away, you have the right to then still support that team. And I can forgive people that have got two teams that might. If you move to Norwich and you go watch Norwich, but your team's still Tranmere, I can forgive that because if
yeah.
you're a
You get
football
that.
fan
Yeah,
and you want to be part of that, that's your routine of going. So I could live with a rugby fan.
yeah,
You know, I might not go watch all the Wakefield games, but that's the result. I want Wakefield's a team I would love to see win anything because they're the only team that I've never even seen in the final. Every other Super League team's at least been in the final. You know,
yeah,
even Salford's been in the final. Lee's
yeah,
won something. Lee were the team that had spent even longer out of the spotlight because their final was 70 and they won it. At least they won it. Their final was 71.
yeah.
Wakefield's was 79 since they've been in the final. But they even Lee have been and got to a final and won it. So yeah, it's
They've signed well, though, mate, haven't they?
sorry.
Wakefield have signed well, though, haven't they?
Well, they got Daryl Powell,
Yeah,
which I'm a
yeah. We've
massive
done it.
advocate for Dazzler. What a guy, first and foremost. Privileged to have played with him. Had success wherever he went. Um, when you think about what does success look like to you, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you're Wigan and St Helens and Leeds, success means silverware.
Trophies. Yeah,
If you're Sheffield, I'm not sure success means. Daryl, I feel sorry for Daryl that what you kind of wasn't part of that Sheffield team that won the Challenge Cup, but
yeah,
that was the next generation of people. You know, Toby Mark Aston, Beans, Paul Broadbent.
yeah,
Had been at the club a long time, but weren't there as long as Daryl. They weren't there when Daryl was pretty much nearly from the beginning. But you know,
yeah,
and Daryl was part of that team that got him promoted 4 or 5 years after forming, and seeing the growth of that team. You know, that's what success looks like to me. for
Yeah,
someone
no,
like
I'd agree.
Darren. And then to do that at Keighley as well,
Yeah,
then to go to a big club and make Leeds competitive for the first time in over a decade. Not individually, obviously
yeah,
Graham Murray and Richie Blackmore more and Yestidals all had bits to play, etc., etc.
yeah.
But it's not a coincidence that Darrell was there.
No,
Meanwhile, obviously during that time, I had my privilege was being part of that international scene with him, and he was part of some of those great victories
yeah,
that Great Britain, had in 19. I mean, he played in 1990. Did he play in 1990, 92, and 94? I think he,
but I wasn't like,
you
well,
know,
I was only 5 then.
yeah. I think Darrell might have been or ruled out through injury. I forget. That's because of my old age. But yeah, and then I mean, he was part of the coaching staff in '97 when we beat them at Old Trafford. He was assistant coach to Andy
Yeah,
Goodway along with Sean McRae, and Andy Goodway was the boss. Darrell did a lot of the hands-on coaching,
yeah,
and Sean experience of Sean doing that for a little while at Saints, um, and then he was integral at Leeds, bringing all those kids through, and
yeah,
suffered for the fact that they were so young. But he was in, he got them to a Challenge Cup semi-finals and was unlucky not to win it in '93 um, when it went to extra time and Gary Connolly got Lance Todd. But obviously, Darrell has a history with Gary, because
yeah,
my memories of playing internationally with Darrell are Gary's memories of playing internationally with Darrell as well. And he obviously knew what Gary could still do, and what value that he had. And so came so close to winning something as a coach with Leeds, but then went on a bit of a sabbatical learning, and then came back and did wonderful things at Featherstone, Castleford. I mean, that Castleford team for me is the best Super League team to have ever played in the Super League era and not won it.
yeah. They were untouchable for like
Oh,
every game but grand final, weren't they?
they have dominated the competition
Yeah,
like I've not seen a team dominate. They were miles ahead, I thought, of it. Saints came close right at the back end because maybe Castleford was slightly on a bit of a dip, and some of the rugby they played that season was fantastic.
oh, that's outstanding.
And so as a coach, for some reason it didn't work at Warrington. I don't know, but Darrell, just a quality rugby
Yeah,
person.
building a
Yeah,
good team at work.
yeah, and I saw him when Hull played Wakefield. I had a couple of minutes with him. Yeah, I mean, he's always great to catch up with, but just a wonderful rugby human. But I've been blessed that there's been too many to mention of those
Yeah,
kind of people involved in my life, because of rugby. Hence,
yeah,
when you say that life doesn't owe you anything, so why should rugby? That's what rugby's given me.
yeah.
So why should it? It doesn't need to owe me anything else.
Yeah.
You know, I've
No, I don't like that.
I've had I've had a pretty nice life.
Yeah.
Um, as in, and that's not money. Money's never motivated me. If you're in
No.
negotiations, you try and get the most you can, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I'm not a big believer in go to the highest bidder. I'm a big believer
No,
in
no.
go where you're happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just feels right for what, and sometimes it feels right and don't work. But
So
then,
be it.
that's part of the journey. But
Yeah,
you know, still take something from it, learn from it. You know, that's my whole
definitely.
story. But you know,
Yeah,
and I'll never regret that part of the story
yeah,
because I made that decision and I went with it, and because of that, you know, I still got some great memories. And so yeah, you know, rugby has given me, it's enabled me to travel around the world, tours to, I mean, Papua New Guinea is awful, but it's still an
yeah,
experience. And it doesn't have to bring the squad together for the
yeah,
3 weeks that you're there. And you get to do, I got to do it with my best mate as my roommate,
yeah.
you know, so it's not bad.
No.
And you know, Australia, New Zealand. We used to go to America every year.
Okay.
We Salford for about
Yeah,
6 years as pre-season training. So it's like I'm going away. I'm seeing sites that I probably wouldn't have seen if I didn't play rugby. I'm
yeah.
really, really lucky. Um, I've probably batted above my average on the lady side because of rugby. But I'd like to speak for most rugby players. I think we all have.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we get beer goggles, but I'm sure that all the wives that we each player's had, they must have some
Goggles.
a strange form of beer goggle that makes them like us. Um, met some wonderful lifelong friends that I played with that have been part of the organisation, not just players, you know, and coaches. It's part of the organisation, and continues to still do so now because of um, being the commentary side of stuff and what
Yeah.
have you. I'd say I've got a face for radio, but Barry Mack. I'm not having that top forward better looking than us, us backs, you know what I mean? And I've said that to his face, so I can say that. And I saw
You're
him. I
braver
saw
than
him.
me, mate.
Yeah, I saw him at the like. I'd say I was faster than him, but I'm not anymore. I can't run. I've already said I've got no knees. But
Yeah.
he can't. But he's got no shoulders, so he couldn't beat me up if he got to me anyway. So um, that's the penance that we pay for having such a good time playing the sport. Is that our bodies are broken.
Yeah. Right, mate. Oh, you not like finishing on some daft questions, fella?
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah. Have you got any pre-match superstitions as a player?
Um, I had. I like to have my time on the table or for strapping. That was it. It was like
Yeah.
um, I went on straight after the coaches chat when I was at Salford or just before to get strapped or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
no left foot, no right foot, no. To be fair, some had earphones. I just try to stay relaxed,
Yeah.
smile. As the older you get, more experience you get, be that calming influence. But you know, stay away from the misery guts that don't like anybody talking to them. Not
Yeah.
laughing a joke, but you know, as you get
Switch
older,
on when it's needed.
you learn. You learn to walk out the
Yeah.
change rooms and beyond. I couldn't do that when I was a kid, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah, generally pretty relaxed.
Yeah. So your favourite away ground you played at?
Well, I've not really played at any of the new places
Yeah.
that I've been obviously been to and look fantastic. But this ground has changed a lot anyway. But it was always pretty good.
Yeah.
I always think as a Yorkshire lad, it was nice going back. And,
Right.
and, and, and growing up, the big clubs, they didn't have to be winning stuff, but the big clubs were always classed as, from historically, Wigan and
Yeah.
Leeds, one each side at Pennines. And Leeds were always known as a money club. It was always nice going and beating Leeds at Leeds.
Yeah.
And the fact that Edinley wasn't a bad pitch, especially then, before,
Yeah.
because a lot of that, half of my career was winter rugby where all the pitches at one stage could look pretty ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just everything about Headland was a little bit nicer than Cast. or St Helens. I love St Helens, and St Helens had the best
Yeah,
pitch. Once we went to Super League, that was the best surface, which was great for
right.
us guys that run on the top of the field. But it was
Yeah,
home. It was home. I mean, it became an away game for me, but it was home. So, and I
yeah,
think that question, I have to rule out all the teams I played for because I played there as a home player as well as an
yeah,
away player. So it's a bit unfair. It would need to be a place that I only ever visited.
yeah.
And
No, I
yeah,
like that. That's a good way of looking at it, that mate.
you know,
Yeah,
Headingley was it was a big venue. It took test matches there. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, it's popular now, mate. It's one of the
Yeah,
more. It's probably the most popular ground people mention.
yeah, it's yeah. So yeah, that'd be mine.
Yeah. So if you could tell a younger you something, mate, what would it be?
Pass earlier to Tia. Might not snap your cue shit. Nobody wants to be
Yeah,
injured.
yeah.
Other
Hey,
than
that's what
that,
hindsight's good for, mate, innit?
and- but other than that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd change anything.
Nah. And you know what, mate? That was like a question I used to ask like from the beginning, that. But the more I've got to speak to you all and I've got a bit older myself, you just wouldn't be who you are and where you're at if you did go and
Yeah,
change something.
I, again, I'm not. You know, everybody's different.
Yeah,
Um, I'd like to think I've got quite a grounded outlook. So when I signed at 18, I started a pension straight away because I
yeah,
know
just
because I
smart.
know rugby's not forever. So
Yeah,
it baffles me when players now talk about, and I do get the mental health side of it, but it
yeah,
baffles me that it suddenly hit them like a brick wall at the end. I'd understand the
yeah,
24-year-old that had the career cut short through injury, more so. But I've heard people say it that have played 300 games. I'm thinking,
yeah. No, the mid-30s.
how many how many 60-year-old rugby players do you know?
No, I know. Yeah,
How many 60-year-old workers do you know?
yeah.
So rugby isn't for life. You
No,
know what I mean? And
yeah,
I, I've been a labourer because that was a job given to me. It wouldn't be my choice.
yeah,
I've been a financial advisor. I was a brewery rep, but on the soft drinks. So I used to
yeah.
sell the pop and the mixes.
Right.
Um, when we were part time, they were the three
Yeah,
jobs that I had before I went full time. And periods where rugby was going okay, and as a club we hadn't gone full time, but didn't have to work.
yeah,
And that was a sacrifice because I didn't have as much money as I did when I did work.
yeah,
But I felt better because I had more time to recover. Um, and then I was a full time player, best of the lot. Then a full
yeah,
time coach, second best. And then I taught, which was interesting and not a secondary. It was a SEND school. You know what I mean? Social, emotional, mental health school. It was the nearest thing to
yeah,
coaching how to scrum. Some of these kids were volatile. It was a challenge, and I really enjoyed it.
yeah,
Um, and then I've been fortunate enough to being able to retire, knowing that at some stage we might have to go back to work. You
yeah.
know,
But it's not something you're scared of, though, mate, is it?
no, because
No.
and I accept that I'm in a fortunate position as a partner, and we are as a family to be where we're at this moment in time. Because my partner owns her own business,
Yeah,
but businesses go under. You know, she knows that, so I know that, and I work when I left Salford, I was getting paid. I had about 5 months where I was getting paid to the end of my contract, but
yeah,
I wasn't in, and I was preparing to go to Kilimanjaro for Steve Prescott.
right.
So I had a bit of a sabbatical. I had a bit of time off because I had the money coming in to pay the bills, but I could have a bit of a time away and decompress, as they say, or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, I didn't feel like I needed to, but it was nice to be able to.
Yeah.
And then I came back from Killy and right, I've got a month and I need to get a job. And I worked in a call centre for a week before, because my CV's gone out, and I've never applied for a job, you know. And so the job that I applied for, the first job I applied for, and they went, "You look like you're a bit overqualified for this," but I went, "I just need a job," and I got it. And
Yeah.
I was in the week's training. Then another job came up from a teaching supply agency thing, and I went,
Right.
"Well, I can't give up on this one unless I know I've got a long enough period. So I can't go in as a agency staff and have a 2-day gig and then give up this and then have nothing." They went, "No, it'll
Yeah.
be at least a term." I went, "Right." So then I went back to my other job and went, something that I'd rather do has come up, but I still don't know where. I didn't know where I was going to say this to them. I didn't know where I was going to be financially because
Yeah.
it was less money than the coaching. And so I did that part time
Yeah.
until I was made permanent. And we was on um, as supply staff for about 14, 15 months.
Right.
So for 14, 15 months, I'm part time on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening and all day Saturday at a call centre. Because
Man,
nothing should be beneath you as well. You've got bills to pay. I had
yeah,
maintenance
no,
to pay.
exactly that.
I had
I just
maintenance
don't
to
think
pay.
we appreciate that, Alan. Like fans or like people that watch the game, we don't appreciate that, mate, do we?
But well, that's what they do every week for all their lives, and they don't have the privilege of being the guy who those people are buying shirts with a name on the back.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier for people from my generation that worked before. I get that this generation of players that have never worked find it a little bit harder. But even so, I was at 18 and went, start my pension, and you know, and back then you could write it to 35, but before I got to 35, they changed that and said they write it to 50. And then just before I got to 50, they said, no, you can only do it at 55. So I still can't, I can get it in 2 months' time. And I won't because I don't need it yet. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
that foresight, hopefully. I knew that rugby wasn't forever.
yeah,
I got rid of my properties a bit back, which allowed me to retire now and do stuff. And I lost some in a divorce. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
my fault, and you know that's not a and all that hard work doesn't go to someone that I'm not with anymore. It goes to my family still.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not with my ex-wife, but my kids will always be my kids, and that's you know
Mostly will, mate. Yeah,
that's part of my and her working
yeah,
legacy. The fact that I was the major earner is irrelevant because that's the
yeah,
partnership that you enter into, and because it doesn't work, then the consequences go with that, you know.
yeah,
And I get that, and that's why I don't understand why some players don't realise that brick wall is about to hit them smash in the face. I get why they missed the game. I still
yeah,
miss the game. I still miss that feeling of walking out and that sound of of anticipation that a crowd has because nobody's losing, nobody's winning. There's a favourite and there's an underdog, but it doesn't matter because both sets know that it could go the opposite way.
yeah,
That anticipation and excitement of knowing you're literally going to war because it is that's the sport. It's so physical,
it's
and
brutal. Yeah,
you know, and it's not for everybody.
no,
You know that hence we don't have as many people playing rugby, even union, but which I don't think has, which is a different kind of physicality.
yeah,
Ours is more high pace, bang impact. Theirs is wear you down, bigger
yeah,
people impact. But yeah, just And so it's not for everybody. Hence, we might only ever really be strong in these areas because of the way
Yeah,
that our sport was born. Um, and knowing that people are gasping as you walk out because they want to be you.
yeah, they do, mate. They do, yeah,
And and then I appreciated you, Bernard Dwyer's. And I tell him every time I see him, and I love the guy. Um, and your Danny Nutley's, but Bernard's my go-to guy on that. The
yeah,
unsung hero, even though he is not just. I mean, he's recognised, but he's not your Martin the Fire, Alan
yeah.
Hunt. Tommy Martins, Sean
He's
Edwards.
he's basically, mate. He's a player's player rather than
Yeah,
necessarily, without being rude, a fan's player, isn't
yeah,
he?
yeah.
Yeah,
Lee Breers, the eye-catching halfbacks that create, or
yeah,
the high speed finishers, show ponies, and that's what the props called us, and they're right, we were,
yeah,
and I loved it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm a showman, and I mean, I hope not in a disrespectful way, but I like to sell it. So I didn't do it beforehand. I wasn't, giving the come on to players that were chasing me.
yeah,
I've on a couple of occasions punched the air before I've got the ball down to the fans, not to the guys chasing me.
yeah.
That wasn't me.
No,
Um, and other players I've seen do it, and I love the celebration afterwards. Loved it, and that was part of the anticipation of walking out, knowing that's what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to get an opportunity to do, and that's what most of the people in this stadium know I'm capable of doing,
yeah,
including the 13 guys that are walking out next year. They might have guys just are more capable of doing it as well. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah, yeah.
knowing that,
And that's half the excitement, isn't it?
you were properly one of those entertainers
Yeah,
was something that, wow, how could you not miss that?
yeah,
But I also knew right from the beginning that won't go on forever. So when it finished, maybe because I coached,
yeah,
it was. I found shutting that book, reopening the next one, although the storyline was very, very similar, I found it still difficult, but easier than I thought.
yeah,
Maybe that's because my body was telling me you are. And I reckon I could have played another year, really
yeah,
forced,
yeah. So you
but,
probably left at the right time then, if that's how you
well,
felt as well.
that year could have been good or bad, though.
Exactly. Yeah,
Not on form, just on body. I
yeah,
mean, one of those sliding doors, something happens, you tweak or whatever, and then you're struggling all year, and it's a slog,
yeah.
or you hit the ground running, and it's tough because the game is tough, but you just about keep on top of it. Who knows? Who knows?
No, that's it. Yeah,
Um, but and I had the offer to coach. Rhino, Carl Harrison had spoke about it,
yeah,
and Steve Blake was retiring in the same game. We got to go out on a high in a final, win, get the club back. And I mean, obviously, I had 14 years at Salford, so that's the club I spent the most time at, but only two as a player. But right some wrongs that I knew I was part of, enjoy it, as I said, and open a new book, the next chapter, however you want to. And I got that. So I guess
yeah,
I know how some players struggle with that
yeah.
because you can't replace it. Well, I struggle with how it's a surprise to them.
Oh, I get that. Yeah,
15 years.
yeah,
If you get 10 years, you're on a massive win.
yeah.
But yeah.
Right, mate. And last but not least, is the microphones in your hand, mate. So what's the go-to karaoke song?
had to be a lot of drink involved, and a lot of people go before me.
Yeah. No, I'm the same, mate. I need to be pissed.
I'll be honest. Back in the days when we were all doing it, it wasn't just a Saints thing. But
Yeah.
when I first signed at Saints, there was up to up to about 93. So nearly 5 years. But
Yeah.
we often, if we went into town after a game, we'd come back and we'd get a lock in,
Yeah.
and there'd be a handful of supporters that actually drunk in the Saints bar because they were local, and a
Right.
lot of them were, you know, it wasn't a party, it wasn't a disco, it was,
Yeah.
only a couple of younger ones, but quite a lot of them, in the 40s and 50s. But they were they were nearly, because of what happened, nearly like friends. In fact, one of them bought my house, my first house, my first
Right.
two down. But he happened to be one of the people that was there, but he also worked with Gary Connolly's wife, girlfriend as
Right.
she was then, and
Yeah.
my then girlfriend, because they both worked for the council, and I think he
Yeah.
worked in both buildings.
Right.
So I knew Terry, and he used to have a beer in a June Tuesday evening there when there was no game. And
Yeah.
Monica, who was the kit lady, she used to wash the kits and stuff. She lived on Mulberry Avenue, just round the corner from where Lee Braze lived. Um,
Right.
so she could walk. And I'd been there and had a pint, and because it was literally 3 minute walks, you'd walk Monica home because she wouldn't let,
Yeah.
she was 70, you won't let a 70-year-old walk home.
No.
And it could be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes leaving
Yeah.
there. And the steward, Kevin Whittle, I went to her funeral a couple of months back, Sheila. Um, Family, it's like an extended family, because I was
Yeah.
there by myself, you know. And they had Dan, who was my age, who was a week younger than me. Dougie, who was about 3 or 4 years younger, and Deb, who's older. She was married to an ex-pro, Steve Peters.
Right.
They're not together anymore, but that's by the by.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Dougie was a young DJ, and we used to sometimes stay in there all night. Sometimes later on, we'd go into town and come back, especially the younger single lads.
Yeah.
Um, and you get a lock in often. And this is in the bar at the old Knowsley Road Saints Club. And there'd be maybe 40 or 50 people in, but 25, 30 of them would be players, some players' wives. And
Yeah.
Dougie would be playing music, and George Mann loved to sing song. And he loved a bit of swing, like Frank Sinatra. But at that
Yeah.
time, early 90s, Harry Connick Jr. was the new, like, modern swing kind of guy. And he'd get up and do a Harry Connick Jr. song. And my go-to would be Summertime,
Right.
drums, please. But I'm not going to do it now because I've had no alcohol. And I've not just played the game. So
Yeah.
yeah. But that would be my go-to.